Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the City Council special meeting for Tuesday, November 20th, 2018 to order. Madam City Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Christy Malchow.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Karen Moran. Present. Councilmember Tom Hornish. Councilmember Jason Ritchie.
Present.
Councilmember Chris Ross.
Present.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart.
Present.
Councilmember Ramiro Valderrama.
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 6-0, the agenda is approved. Our first order of business is an emergency ordinance adopting the interim development regulations regarding transportation concurrency and level of service for road corridors and segments. Mr. City Manager, I don't know if you want to lead off here.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, as the mayor has indicated, this is an emergency ordinance that will set your concurrency model should you choose to approve it. This particular ordinance adds volume and capacity of 1.1 for corridors and 1.4 for segments to your model. This is in addition to the following elements that you have already directed staff to include, which include AM and PM peak hour measures, using principal and minor arterial corridors and segments as defined in the 2017 draft comp plan update, but do not include the East Lake Sammamish Parkway northeast or southeast. It's intersection-wide volume-weighted average delay approach with a level of service C for minor and collector arterials, level of service D for principal arterials, with allowance for level of service E, where the level of service D cannot be achieved with 3 approach lanes per direction. It also modifies the HCM 6th edition method by incorporating the FDOT adjustments to the HM base capacity if left turn pockets, right turn lanes, medians, flashing yellow arrows, and intelligent transportation systems technologies are present. If this ordinance is approved this evening by five votes, it will go into effect immediately. If it's approved by 4 votes, it will go into effect 5 days after its publication, and this, of course, will be sent back either way to the Planning Commission for its review and recommendation, and as it comes to the process, there will be public hearings to include this ordinance into permanent regulations. You have been debating concurrency for over a year now. You have worked on this particular last element. You debated it on September the 18th, October the 1st, October the 16th, October the 22nd, and November the 13th. At the last meeting, the council was split with a 4-3 vote in directing us to include this latest element. So I would recommend to you, for the sake of time tonight, though you may not agree with this, that you move to a vote on this issue. I think any further debate, though it may be good to hear for some folks, I don't think you're going to sway anyone's minds on this issue. I think you have debated it long enough, and all of you are very firm in your beliefs on this issue. I can indicate that staff is prepared to administer this ordinance against future development requests, and we are prepared to begin work on the TMP to come back and look at how we begin to address whatever issues that may be brought forward by those. Additionally, if you approve this ordinance this evening, we will bring back to you an ordinance to lift the moratorium at the next meeting. So with that, Madam Mayor, I'll turn it back to the council, and we are prepared to answer any questions you have about this issue.
Very good. Are there any questions or motion? Councilmember Valderrama.
Yeah, I saw that the staff had prepared a couple of charts as to the impacts on the new standards and the information that we have, I think, for the 2016, 2024 data that have been prepared. Is there a list of the roads that would possibly be impacted given the memo that we had received from Victor for the tip as to implications that might change the tip as it currently stands or not?
I'll direct that question to Mr. Lenishevsky.
You've gotten good with that name. Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, citizens, staff. Steve Oniszewski, Public Works. I might ask Councilmember Valderrama to maybe elaborate a little more. The only charts that are in there are the tables that were provided in the packet.
That's correct, that were in the packet in there, and I'm wondering if from those charts, you were able to see if there was going to be any impact on us preparing the tip, if any additional roads would have to be added or segments onto it.
I guess specific to Sahalia Way, which is where we currently show a failure under the existing scenario, right? That is a snapshot in 2016, and then you have the snapshot for 2024. I think we have legal in the room for a good reason, but what we did and what we had looked into, so we have a capital project right now on the tip, which is the ITS system.
Yeah.
That does not solve our problem on 2024. However, if we snapshot and estimate some growth factors in for next year in 19, with the implementation of that technology, we do show that V over C ratio dropping down under an acceptable level below 1.0, which would again be a snapshot in time next year under 19 circumstances.
1.0 or 1.1?
It would be below 1.1, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. Did I say 1.0? Yeah, I think the estimate now is like a 1.05. So doesn't help today, but it does help tomorrow that we do have a plan in place for the interim. So that is currently on the tip. Establishing the tip in itself will be the next step.
Yeah.
But we do want to make sure we know, or we caution to those long-term capital improvements. The TMP and whatever does come out of that may also change the look and feel of the north end, south end, any end of town. So just those separate processes may help. That will add to modeling, simulation, and other multimodal safety analytics. So some notes we did craft because I did figure the question may arise tonight. So I hope that helps a little.
Yeah, that was it. Thank you.
I don't have any more lights on, so I'd certainly entertain a motion.
I'd move to adopt both ordinances as drafted.
Needs a second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any more discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those, okay, Councilmember Stewart.
I would just like to ask that as this emergency ordinance, assuming it passes, goes to the Planning Commission, that the Planning Commission look at the fact that our directional factors in our current calculations are generalized numbers and are not indicative of the actual factors on the ground as measured in the field, particularly the D factor. That was one point that Victor brought up, that particularly on Sahalia Way and probably a number of our other corridors, they are highly directional. And we're currently using a D factor of 0.55, which is not indicative of the conditions on the ground. So I would like that to be something that gets reviewed as part of the work that the Planning Commission does.
We'll make sure that's passed along to the Planning Commission. I'm sure they'll be excited to have another healthy debate on this issue.
I would propose that it might go either way, make it worse or better. So if you're okay with that, that makes sense.
Be accurate.
They will debate it and bring you their recommendation.
Okay, Councilmember Ross.
Yeah, just a question on page 12, the red line. It says that if will be either denied or may choose to accept a 90-day reservation. Is there supposed to be an appeal? Because I think the appeal is referenced early, three-pronged. And there's only two of them mentioned in that page 12, comparing it to page 8. So what's missing from the second part is appeal the denial of the application for a certificate of concurrency as a remedy if it fails. And then on page 12, I think it doesn't list that as a remedy.
Actually finding it.
Page,
I see it on page 12.
page 12, above, it's the,
Just below the
right under the table, the short, last part of the table, page 12.
Here.
And then you read down. And it's on the first full word paragraph at the end of it. If any concur,
Do you have a number?
The 3, top of the page 12.
correct. Is there something missing there? Is the appeal process.
Steve, are you finding where he's, okay.
Because it appears, I may be wrong, an inconsistency if you reference back to page 8, which articulates 3 remedies.
So I'll double check, but as the city engineer had stated quietly to me, those are different paths out, so you
Okay.
wouldn't have to appeal if you chose one of these paths, and the appeal process up above under section, what is that, section 2,
Page
8?
On section 2 has A, B, and C, and it appears the second part has A and C. And are they supposed to be parallel provisions?
Page 8. A, B, and C there. But on page 12, it only addresses 2 of those 3.
Mike, are you seeing where he's looking?
I am.
I see what you mean.
He's under page 8, Mike, item number 3.
Mike has a page 8 if he doesn't have.
14A 10040.
Yeah,
These are the 3 he's addressing right here. And he's saying on page 8, right, A, B, and C are there, but they're not.
So it's 14A 10.040C, or I'm sorry,
3, sub A, B, and C.
E, sub A, B, and C, yeah.
Right, and-
So, yeah.
What Councilmember Ross is referencing is in the next section.
You see that, Mike?
It's subs A, or provide public facilities as described in
There's some
sub
things paper's
C.
better for.
That's why I was trying to give him references to the code, yeah.
Right? So his question is under this section here.
That's a good catch.
Core segment operates at or below the level source standards of concurrent surface shall be granted. If any. Worse. Choose to accept A or C, but up above, we offer 3, A, B, and C.
I don't write the ordinances. Not here anyhow. I've done it before. Yeah.
So the denial or C. I don't know why the context would not allow an appealing, but it's like Andrew was saying, well, it's not a denial under this section.
Well, I think we spent a lot of time going back and forth on these computers, but I think we've got it now, Councilmember Ross. And I guess I would recommend that you do make those as parallel provisions. It's not a requirement, but it sure makes sense in this instance. So.
so do you want to make an amendment there, Councilmember Ross?
I make a motion that we amend to make them parallel, consistent with.
Second?
Okay. The amendment has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, which is making them parallel so that all 3 are down on page 12, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 7-0, the amendment has passed. Now we're back to the main motion, which is adoption of the ordinance as amended. Is there any more discussion? Councilman Ross, did you have anything else or no?
No.
Good. Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, I think we probably need some hands up on the nay, just so I'm clear. Okay, by a vote of 4-3, the ordinance passes as amended. So it will not go into effect immediately, but 5 days after publication. Okay. I think that takes care of that business for a little while.
Does, we just need to recess until 6:30.
Recess till 6:30, or can we do recess and then carry some of these others forward?
Well, we haven't done the Pledge of Allegiance yet. We have the Cub Scout troop coming in for that.
Yeah, but we can still do it. We just did this, we found the Pledge of Allegiance.
I realize that. I hate to get into something and then
This is going to be a long night.
I know. We could potentially pause
I think,
midstream on
think we
something.
can-
yeah, you
totally
could
pause.
take some of the minor issues like consent agenda unless you've got debate on it. I mean, the rest of it's kind of posted for the 6:30
Exactly.
meeting, so, but
We can't do proclamations.
And what you can get done.
I could,
You could also take some citizens' comment now, but have it again at 6:30 as well.
Oh, that's actually a good idea.
Okay.
I like that, yeah.
Yeah, let's get moving.
Lita, do you want to grab the public comment page?
Let's use the time.
Right, right.
Close public comment.
Well, don't forget, there's also dinner back there, so we can either sit here and eat in front of everybody or take a short break to actually eat, or we're going to be eating while we're conducting business.
You don't need 45 minutes to eat this.
That was what I was saying. We might be able to take a little bit of, maybe let's do 15 minutes and we'll break at 6 because we're not supposed to be back till 6:30.
I'm leaving, I'll leave around 6:15, but I'm going to call back in to hear public comment.
while they're gathering that for you, I'll just touch on the manager's report. There's only one item there that I need you to look at and tell me if you agree with that, and that has to do with your council meeting schedule between now and right after the first of the year. I know it is, I think, kind of normal practice for you normally to not have that last meeting in December.
Correct.
We do have a couple of items that need to be taken care of. If we can move those, we can get those done and up to the meeting on the 11th, we can make that a special meeting and then not hold the one on the 18th. I'm uncertain at this time whether we can get those ready for that, but we'll be working on it, trying. The major one's that plat approval that I don't know if they can have it ready for then or not, but we'll try. But other than that, if that meets with your approval, we'll kind of,
I think that's fine.
Need a
unless you want to
motion for
get
that?
together and
or-
watch football on the 1st.
Do you need a motion to move that meeting?
No, I
Okay.
just, if you don't have any objections to that, we'll, but not over a debate. I did want to indicate, too, that to the council, all I wanted for Christmas was a V over C approved. So
Done. And it's only November.
So I want to clarify, though, did you say 1218 is canceled then?
right now, we're still
Not
on
sure.
for 1218. If we can, those items which are moving to that agenda, if we can get those done so we can get those on the meeting of the 11th, we'll post that as a special meeting, and we won't have the one on the 18th. And I'll know more here in the next week
All
or
right,
so.
thank you.
Okay.
What the council's plan is here, folks, is to take at least some public comment, probably till about 6 o'clock, and then we're going to pause and circle back on our agenda, which is formally slated to start at 6:30, and then we'll go back to public comment. So if you're not able to make it in that 10-minute window here, don't worry, we'll get to you. First, I have Mark Cross. Oh, I need to read, sorry, the public comment. Mark, come on up while I... this is an opportunity for the public to address the council. 3-minute limit per person, or 5 minutes if representing the official position of a recognized community organization. If you'd like to show a video or PowerPoint, it must be submitted or emailed by 5 p.m. the end of business day to the city clerk, Melanie Anderson, at manderson@sammamish.us. Please be aware council meetings are videotaped and are available to the public. Mr. Cross, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Mark Cross. I live at 247 208th Avenue Northeast here in Sammamish. I got an opportunity a month ago to attend a Kokanee Working Group meeting. I was impressed by the kind of the multi-jurisdictional group that included U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, particularly experts on freezing salmon eggs to help preserve our Kokanee population, at least the genetic material into the future. I was also impressed with Wally Pereira and his continued exceptional efforts, along with this range of agencies, state, federal, and King County, and the city of Sammamish, by the way. But I also was struck by the urgency. You had a big success in the construction season this summer in completing the culverts on Zakus Basin. And to The one thing, though, is Zaccoos was always considered such a minor stream, it's never had water quality testing, and I've mentioned this before, I think. I know that on December 4th, you're looking to sign a contract with King County to do water quality monitoring, and I applaud having a monitoring program that will provide you with a lot of information. Without spending additional money, I would ask that you instruct your contractor to front-load water quality sampling with Zaccoos Basin so that along with George Davis Creek that we have information on, along with Ebright that we have information on, that you could start to understand what potential challenges Zaccoos has from a water quality standpoint. This would do two things for you. One, it would help inform the Zaccoos Basin as it comes to you, the basin plan as it comes to you in the spring, so that you'd have some information on what the water quality actually is in that basin as you decide what projects maybe are appropriate. The second thing is I know you're working hard on water quality and town center and what to do with storm drainage. And really, if you're ever going to figure out what to do with that storm drainage, or really what we're going to do with the road runoff just from the level of urbanization that we've experienced to date, we need to understand that water quality, which you'll get from your sampling. And then we also need to understand what are the kind of projects that you could do, detention ponds, filtering through, peat moss type of materials that would help with both the metals, and then perhaps there's some septic tanks here in Sammamish amongst the 3,500 that are past their due date. So I appreciate that, and I hope that you can give this more time and attention in the spring. Thank you.
Next, I have Harry Shedd.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
One of the actions we can always take as council, if we want to, is to ask the city manager to include that. I think it's a great idea to put that water quality on Zaccoos at front and center. So,
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Do you have my PowerPoint? Harry Shedd, 2313 Sahalni Drive East, here in Sammamish. Mayor and Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening about the Heritage Society. Most of you know what the Heritage Society is. Most of the people in the city do not. So you'll probably hear more about it as the days go by. The slide that's up there right now shows 4 of our neighboring cities and the facility that they have to operate from. We don't have a spot to operate from at this point. We hope that the Rert Fried House will be our home base, that we'll have the opportunity to have an office, to have some display information, but that's down the road a ways. Right now, the house is along very nicely. See if my clicker works. Can you move to the next slide for me? Thank you. Here's the Rert Fried House after much, much work, time and effort, energy, a great facility. And in a day and age when we have very little to look to the past to in this city, we're happy to have this house at its condition. This has all been volunteer work. I say all, mostly volunteer work. We did sub the wiring and plumbing, and that was, of course, with the contractors. We recently have completed a fireplace in the home, and we're now ready to finish the inside completely. And the problem is that it takes money. We don't have the funds available. We didn't get them in our appeal because the utility price is pretty high. But what we would like to have come the first part of the year when we anticipate another grant that will allow us to go ahead and finish the inside of the house, we'd like to have the electrical utility available. Right now, I just ask you to think about that. Come the first of the year, if we get what we think will be a nice grant to do that, we'll come back to you, let you know exactly what those funds would be. But right now, we want you to anticipate more use with Heritage. It's growing in the city in different ways, and we'll be speaking to you on a more regular basis to bring you up to date on what's going on. Thank you for your time tonight.
Councilmember Valderrama.
Harry, As I recall, when I read your letter that you had sent to the council, you had also said that it's potentially possible to receive apportionment of those funds that were originally estimated.
Well, that's why I say, rather than the full utility funding, which is up in the six-figure range, if we could at least, at this point, I get you thinking in that direction, but at this point, have enough to go ahead with the electrical portion so that when we get the grant, that we'll be able to go ahead and finish the inside of the
And
house.
you'd be able then to see what the balance is, if any.
Yes, we'll have a balance for you. We'll know how much we got approved and be able to move forward step by step as we have throughout the whole process. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ella Moore.
I'm Ella Moore, and 50-year resident of the Plateau, and I moved to downtown Issaquah about 4 years ago. But I've been involved with this house since 2010, since the very beginning. And what I'm going to explain to you tonight is about the budget line item for the utilities and the effect it would have on our work if it's delayed. So first, let me know let me tell you where we stand on grants. So far, we have put $266,000 into the house. We have $123,400 coming from the state. That'll make a total of $390,000. And then I just, 10 days ago, I sent in a grant to For Culture, King County, for $76,000, and that's for completing the interior. What would happen if we don't get the utility lines? And this is important. We have received from King County a certain type of grant that requires that we maintain a museum and that we keep the house functional, it be open to the public on a regular basis. And of the money we've received, $128,000 of that is for cultural facilities. If we don't complete or fulfill in a timely manner our obligations under the contract, that money can be asked for return. And the county doesn't like to do that, but they have done that just recently for a house in Kirkland, where the people did not complete the requirements of the contract, and the county did go after the money. However, the biggest impact will be on the state grant. We have a state grant for $123,000, and we had to do a 2-for-1 match to get that grant. We would not have been able to meet that match if we hadn't been able to use the estimated cost of putting the utilities in, which at that time was $103,000. So that allowed us to apply for the grant and get it. Now, to get the money, and I see my time is going to run out, but I think I can get somebody to give me some time. Okay. Thank you.
You got to get up here.
You've got to come up to the microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't read lips.
Yeah. She needs to take the mic.
Yeah.
I'm Dee Carroll, 20814 Northeast 26th Place, Sammamish, and I yield my time to Ella.
Okay. And just so it's clear, she is the next speaker on here, so.
Okay. So the requirements of the state grant are quite stringent, much more so than the county. And it's worked on the biennium basis, the legislature's biennium basis. We are on the list to become approved for this grant. And when the legislature passes its budget, June of 2019, that's when the money will be awarded. And then they go through the process of writing the contracts, and it's negotiated with each grantee. And that would probably happen fall of 2019. Well, then the work can start on the house. But everything has to be finished by June of 2021. Any money that is left over, you lose. So in order to, it's a complicated procedure, but in order to receive the money of the grant, we have to show that twice that amount has been put into the house. In other words, if we went for $50,000 of the grant in work that we had done, and this is for the kitchen addition, we would have to show that $100,000 had been put into the house in order to get the 50. So it's a matter of timing, and that's why delaying the utilities is so important to us, because if you delay, then there's a delay in getting the money, and you run the risk of not coming underneath the time deadline. So we could stand to lose a huge portion of the grant. So time is of the essence here. The third thing is that we have a tremendous expense with our storage. We spend $6,000 a year on storage alone for 2 large storage lockers. And we would be able to cut that in half if we could have access to the house to put items up in the attic. The house has a full height stand-up attic, and if we could cut our costs down to 1 storage unit, that would help us in our operating costs a lot. And also, if we get the for culture grant of $76,000.
I need you to wrap up.
Okay.
Somebody else.
No, I think we're going to pause the, at this time, we're going to pause our public comment. So if you want to just take a couple seconds, I need you to wrap up, though.
Sure. Okay, if we were to get the county grant of $76,000, we would have to have, because it involves hanging drywall, we have to have heat in the house. So that would not be able to be fulfilled either. So.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question for her.
Sure.
Before she goes, what's impeding you from using the attic?
Oh, that's really simple. Bats, insulation bats, and plywood, just to make a temporary floor. Yeah. And so.
Do you need utilities to store stuff in there? Do you actually need to have?
Well, it'd be nice to have heat. And we have put in we have a ductless electric heat pump. We paid $16,000 to have it put in. And it won't run. Right now we run on an extension cord and a hose. So, but to go further, we need 220.
Okay, thank you. For anyone that stepped into the room prior to us starting public comment, we're kind of ahead of schedule here. So the council's going to take a break because we're not slated to actually take the public comment until 6:30. So if you haven't had a chance to make public comment, don't worry. We're coming back, and that's kind of where we'll start off after we do the Pledge of Allegiance. So bear with us for a few. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call us back to order here, and I just need to check quickly. Pam, are you on the phone? Do we have you or no?
I am, thank you.
Very good. Okay, so we're kind of starting a little backwards here. We've already done some business here this evening, and we're going to do our Pledge of Allegiance. And this evening, we have Cub Scout Pack 556 is going to perform the flag ceremony and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Please rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, Cub Scouts. We appreciate it. Okay. We are going to resume public comment at this point. We've already taken some. So next on the list, I have Jeanette Weaver.
You're driving up to your driveway after running to post some mail, and there's a hunter in your road carrying a compound bow. This is what happened in our neighborhood this week. In our neighborhood, we sit between Beaver Lake and the Hazel Wolf wetland, and there's several parcels, acreages. I think mine might be one of the largest at just under 8 acres. A bow hunter had been allowed to hunt, which is in accordance with the law, on the property of an absentee owner off of Southeast 17th. That's a 2.5-acre parcel. A little bit like shooting fish in a barrel. He missed, and then he chased the deer onto the property of other owners. Now, he did come and ask us for permission to retrieve the deer that he described as wounded, but I gotta tell you, in days like the days we live in, seeing a hunter in your road makes you think of things like Parkland and other things like that that have happened around the country. The neighbors are very upset about it. You have received some emails, I'm aware, from our neighborhood just saying that this is just unacceptable. We're not anti-hunter, and we think that still there are situations out here on acreages like ours where there are issues with wild animals. There are packs of coyotes that come into my backyard and sing. There are cougars. There are bears. There was a bear within 10 feet of my son when we first moved in. There are things that happen with wildlife. But deer are a different story. And we ask you to take a look at the hunting code and the municipal code. We'd like to suggest a measured approach, that there might be a minimum number of acres identified as suitable for hunting deer. So instead of just being able to get permission from a homeowner, which right now would mean that somebody in a 7,000-acre lot could get permission to go out there and shoot a deer, that there might be 5, 8, or 10-acre minimums required for those hunters to get permission to come into the property. And that, plus the right for owners to deal with nuisance wild animals, like I said, like the coyotes. I think if you could address those two things, it would really improve the situation. But the way it is right now, I got to tell you, we in our neighborhood are extremely concerned about this. There's a lot of contractors, and in fact, the hunter was a subcontractor working for this non-resident owner who just happened to see there. Wow, there's a lot of deer here. This is easy pickings. So we'd like you to address that if you would, please.
So just as an aside, I think council did have a discussion yesterday with the city manager, and the police chief stepped in, and I think we're going to look at some of the language, which appears to actually be a little conflicting as well. So I think, Mr. City Manager, I don't know if you want to say anything additional to that, but.
Well, other than we did have that discussion, and we'll be bringing that back to the council for your consideration.
Councilmember Valderrama.
Yeah, out east in at least Montgomery County, Maryland, where Pam and I originate from, they allow hunting by bow. And actually, that's how they start calling back the deer. And if they don't do enough, then the state police go out and shoot them up. But they're restricted to doing it on state parks and city parks, not on private property parcels. So I don't know if we want to look at being able to have some flexibility or limitation so that they're not in the private property neighborhoods.
We'll bring you some options.
Just one more thing, we did put something out on Facebook. One of my neighbors put something out in the local community, and did get quite a bit of pushback from people who thought that getting rid of all hunting wasn't right. So there was like, and of course it's not scientific, and there's nothing about that that's to be taken completely, but just to know that there were plenty of people who definitely still wanted to be able to hunt or take care of nuisance wildlife on their property.
Okay, next I have Bruce, I think it's Carson? Sorry.
Good evening. I've been chosen to speak with you on behalf of a newly formed nonprofit organization called the Sammamish Botanical Garden Society. My name is Bruce Corradio. I live in Issaquah, 16831 266th Avenue Southeast. I'm a master gardener and a volunteer member of the board of the Sammamish Botanical Garden Society. We are here this evening to encourage full and timely funding of the Big Rock Park Section B. As you may have guessed, the SBGS has big plans for Big Rock Park. In the beginning, partnering with the city, we would develop a heritage garden. However, in the future, we foresee planning, developing, and maintaining plant collections, garden designs, and methods for the education of the community. This would be accomplished by empowering local volunteers, the generosity of the private and commercial community, and government support. This educational program would encompass many horticultural aspects. Ultimately, a garden modeled after the Bellevue Botanical Garden would be developed. This could be a world-class garden that the community would pride itself in, which would involve public, private, profit, and nonprofit elements. The project would involve, but not be limited to, elementary, secondary, and college student research, food banks, local garden clubs, specific plant organizations, the King County Master Gardeners, public art programs, King Conservation District, and many, many more. Installations could include species demonstration gardens such as roses, fuchsias, dahlias, hydrangeas, and primroses. Raised bed vegetable gardens could supply produce for local food banks. An on-site state-of-the-art greenhouse could supply vegetable starts, ornamental plant propagation, and research. As you can imagine, the potential for a botanical garden is vast. In the end, the only thing we have to offer generations coming after us is a legacy. Let's begin the legacy. Let's get started and fully fund this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I have Janelle Moore Robertson. Nope, okay. Jan Bird.
I'm Jan Bird. I live at 3310 221st Avenue Southeast here in Sammamish. And I'm talking regarding Big Rock Park B, and I support executing a contract with KPG for planning and design of Site B. Okay. We received this land in January 2017. I remember being at this meeting at the time when Mary Pickett gave it to us. And with the proposed construction starting in 2020, it's likely not to open to 2021 at the earliest. Thus, it's important that not to delay this any longer. I see parks as a mitigation to the citizens of Sammamish for having to deal with higher density and more traffic. People are stressed out, and parks and open space help people's mental and physical health. Yes, you need to deal with the traffic issues, but they will be difficult to solve. For much less money, you can help with a sense of well-being for your residents by providing a robust park system. Parks bring people together. We already have the Sammamish Heritage Society involved with the Reared Freed House on this property, and you've just heard from this group of avid gardeners, Sammamish Botanical Garden Society. They volunteered to help plan and plant the Heritage Garden next to this house. They also have a vision, which has long been in the bucket list of Sammamish friends, to eventually create a botanical garden for the city. We all remember how it was that a local group of citizens who initiated the idea of buying property to connect the Hazel Wolf wetlands with Soaring Eagle Park, which is now our Beaver Lake Preserve. These efforts of local citizen groups should be encouraged. In closing, I want you to imagine giving someone a gift for an important occasion, and the receiver of the gift telling you, thank you, but I will save it and open it later. And then the next occasion occurs a year later, and you found the first gift hasn't been opened, and they also ask and say, well, I'm going to save this for later. So imagine how you as a giver of this gift would feel. I would think if we wait much longer, Mary Piggott is probably going to feel the same. Part of the joy of giving is seeing people enjoying the gift. So if you don't move forward with this project, you are not only depriving the citizens of Sammamish with the use of this gift, you're also depriving Mary of the joy of seeing people use that gift. You know the protest chant that people use these days? This is what democracy looks like. I'd like to change that to, this is what visioning looks like. The vision of interconnected parks and trails. Your park staff has a vision. Your parks commissioners have a vision. Your citizens have a vision. So now we're inviting City Council to join the rest of us in this vision for Sammamish. Let's move forward with this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I had Sid Gupta, followed by Elise Vanderhoff.
Sid Gupta, 4309 243rd Avenue Southeast. I am a member of the Parks Commission, but my comments tonight are as an individual and not meant to represent the Commission. I'm here to speak about two concerns I have, the first being the build-out of Big Rock Park Site B as per the master plan, and the second, the potential diversion of REIT funds from parks to transportation projects. Big Rock Park Site B was generously donated to the city. The $3.8 million cost for necessary improvements to the site before it can be opened is a drop in the bucket compared to what it would cost the city to independently acquire and develop a similar site. Just look at the recently purchased Beaton Hill property. That was a great purchase, and I think it's very much in line with the community's priorities. But that was also $6 million for less land area that, depending on the amenities cited there, will require significant additional investment. Set that against the less than $4 million to open Site B, and Big Rock Park Site B sounds like a tremendous value and a huge boon to our city. It's worth noting that those costs on Site B are for things like right-of-way improvements, septic field work, and the decommissioning of a well. Even if we defer the construction and delay opening Site B for the unknown length of time until Site C is transferred to the city, and that only if Mary Piggott is still inclined to donate Site C after Site B is deferred, those costs won't go away. Right-of-way improvements on 220th Avenue will still be required, as will emergency vehicle turnaround access and ADA parking to the Reed Freed House. In fact, the cost of construction will only go up, projected to be about 5% per year. From what I understand, we have money in the park CIP to cover this project, and those funds can only be used to expand the capacity of our park system. To me, this is a park project that should galvanize the city. We should, in my mind, we should be celebrating this incredible opportunity given to us right in the heart of Sammamish. Research conducted for the 2018 PRO Plan, Park Recreation Open Space Plan, indicates that 86.5% of our community thinks that there are just enough or not enough parks and recreation opportunities in Sammamish. As our population continues to grow, so too must our parks. Also, per that survey, 77.6% of the community wanted more opportunities for more passive use parks, the highest priority out of the listed categories. And within passive use, 95% of the community wanted more trails. Again, by far the #1 priority. Big Rock Park Site B seems to check all of our biggest boxes. And while it's terrific that the space will be preserved, I think we want to be able to use that park. To me, the data seems to bear that out. Additionally, I heard from some members of the council that REIT 1 funds, the real estate excise tax as a part of every household in the city, should be diverted from parks to fund transportation projects. From what I understand, REIT funds represent a significant portion of what parks takes in every year. That's $2 to $3 million that we'd be taking away from our parks, which I believe are a big part of what makes Sammamish such a desirable place to live. Per our PRO Plan outreach, 71.5% of households in our community visit one or more of our parks at least twice a month. $2 million will not get us very far for a road project, but as we can see with Site B's projected cost, that can be a big piece of a banner park project. Honestly, I struggle to follow the logic that we would on the one hand invest $6 million for parkland on the Beaton Hill property, and on the other gut our incoming funding, crippling our ability to support our park system going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. After Earlies, I have Sharon Steinbus, followed by Karen Howe.
Good evening. I'm Iris van der Hoff, 3500 East Lake Sammamish Parkway Southeast. And I'm here both individually and as president of the Sammamish Heritage Society. I really wish to join the speakers tonight to encourage the city to fully fund, build out Parcel B. It's a gem, and we need to make it a true gem and accessible to the people. SHS is very grateful to the City Council and the Parks Department for the support that you have given us in our efforts to restore the Reed House on Parcel B. The restoration is a joint undertaking that will give the city a wonderful educational and cultural focal point to Parcel B at Big Rock Park. As you know, it's been a multi-year effort to date to get the house to the situation it's in. More work is needed, and part of that requires the completion of Parcel B as a fully open park. SHS has received more than $250,000 from grants for the restoration work. That includes grants from the state and from King County. We had a grant of $24,750 earlier this year to restore the chimney at the house. And we have been awarded $122,000 in this budget cycle by the state, although the funds haven't been released yet. Most of these grants require that the house, the building we're putting the funds into, is open for public access. We understand you have difficult budget issues in front of you, but we're concerned that delaying the work on Parcel B, and specifically the utility connection to the Reed House, will significantly impair our restoration efforts and may put our grant status in jeopardy because of the requirements that the property be open. We appreciate that you must look at all the items, and you must do so very carefully. But we believe Big Rock Park Parcel B really needs to be finished, fully open to the public. We specifically believe that the impact of not including the utility connection to the Reed House at a proposed cost of about $122,000 will have significantly more negative fallout than the relatively small number of dollars that is in terms of the whole city budget. Please restore the full funding for the build-out of Parcel B, and including the utility connection for the Reed House to help us make the house accessible to the residents of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Steinbus.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Sharon Steinbus. I live at 24933 Southeast 14th Street. I will wear a couple of hats as I speak to you this evening. First, I wear my Sammamish plant steward and community wildlife habitat hats as I urge you to fully fund and to open Big Rock Park Parcel B in a timely manner. Think of this as a gift you are giving to the people of Sammamish. If you have seen this park, you appreciate what a beautiful site this is. With rolling lawns and wooded trails, the Freed House, the planned heritage garden, and the amazing tree house, this park will be a fabulous addition to Sammamish's already outstanding park system. The park was donated to the city by Mary Piggott, and there are many volunteer organizations in the city that are ready to pitch in and help with setup and maintenance. For example, restoring old trails to native habitat, building new trails, converting high-maintenance lawns to pollinator-sustaining wildflower meadows. In addition, the newly formed Sammamish Botanical Garden Society is ready to partner with parks to bring the vision of a heritage garden next to the historic Freed House to a blooming reality. I urge you to vote yes tonight to support Sammamish's park system and to give this early holiday gift to the people of Sammamish. In addition, I'd like to respectfully request that when the vote is taken, we see a show of hands. Next, I wear my Sammamish Community Wildlife Habitat hat and speak also as a member of my Coyote Country neighborhood. Last week, we had a bow hunter in our neighborhood asking permission to come on people's property to track down a buck that he had wounded but hadn't killed. Some owners gave their permission because they did not want the wounded buck to die on their property. People with children and pets are concerned, of course. I'm wondering whether I need to put my dogs in bright orange vests. The hunter is apparently not the best shot. We have contacted the police and talked to the hunter, and everything he did was legal. I think my neighborhood is in agreement that we don't want hunting within the boundaries of our neighborhood. This was a 2004 code that needs to be revisited, especially as Sammamish will continue to grow and neighborhoods will get closer together. I would like to respectively request that the city revisit this code. Thank you.
For those that were not sitting in the audience when we had the original public comment on this incident that Ms. Steinbus just said, the council is looking at it. So the city manager and the police chief are aware of it, and so we are looking at it. Next, I have Karen Howe.
Karen Howe, 2224 235th Court, Northeast Sammamish. So longtime resident, first time park advocate. If I could have my first slide, please. So Cub Scouts in the room, this is for you. What's wrong with this picture? Do you see a cool treehouse? What's wrong? Is there a fence around a treehouse? Is it possible you don't have access? Do you think that's a good idea? You know what? I think you guys are pretty smart. I think you might have a different concept here. So I'm here clearly to suggest that you want to approve all the funding for Site B. You have the money. We don't have to do a bake sale. You have the capital to do it. It's earmarked for parks. For those of you in business, you'll recognize this as a kind of updated SWOT analysis, right? So strengths. Parks are our strong suit. It's what we must have. It's what we center ourselves around. It's one of our greatest assets. Aspirationally speaking, Site B represents the very best of us. We are more than a series of concurrency studies. We're more than that. We're more multidimensional than that. We actually love our parks, and we can take advantage of a fantastic donation here by simply moving ahead with what you know is the right thing to do. This is for our shared future. It is your legacy, in fact, to the city. Opportunistically, this is leveraging the 20 acres that were gifted to us. The 3.2, 3.8, whatever it lands on is a terrific bargain. And to points earlier made, what on earth would you spend that money on that could possibly be more valuable over time or hold the legacy position that this park does? In terms of results, you know our population is increasing. I don't have to explain that. There's a social justice issue here. As you have density, you must have open space. You must have parks. That's how you balance out the population. And in terms of risks, I believe you're jeopardizing Site C acquisition or any other future land donation. Why would I give you anything? You don't use what I give you. So costs will escalate over time. It will be far less expensive to implement now. And just to drive this point home as far as I possibly can, the Seattle Art Museum thought that they were going to get a wonderful donation too. And you know what? They announced it to the public and everything, and then they didn't get it. The Hopperware, the Edward Hopper, sold for $92 million to the highest bidder instead. The entire collection was broken up and sold off. I don't want to see that happen, and I know you don't either. This is an easy decision. Make the right one.
Thank you. Next, I have Rituja Indipur.
Good evening, Mayor Malchow, Deputy Mayor Moran, and the City Council. I am Rituja Indipur. I serve on the Planning Commission, but today I make a comment as a private citizen. Sammamish is, as all we know, a very young city. In fact, next year we celebrate 20 years. Parks, open spaces, trails have been amenities that have attracted people to Sammamish from all over the world. When the city was established, and since then, the citizens, the council alike have prioritized urban forest parks and trails for our city. and that has realized our vision for the city to be the best in the region. We have been extremely fortunate to have been gifted Site B by Mary Pigott to expand the Big Rock Park. With its treehouse, the trails, and the urban canopy, it is indeed a treasure and a refuge to our city. It's a treasure for our parents and our grandparents and our kids, and also a refuge for our animals that live in the city. I know all of you are passionate about protecting the environment and ensuring that the public resources be fully utilized and available to all its citizens. With this, I urge you to start preparations to get the Big Rock Park Site B ready to be open to the public as soon as possible. Maybe we all will be fortunate that the gates open to the park for just in time for its 20th birthday. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Marianne Wilkins.
Good evening, Council. I'm Mary Ann Wilkins, 20917 Southeast 12th Street in Sammamish. I've been a resident here since 1978. Anyway, I'm here too to support the funding of Parcel B completion. I'm sure many of you have visited Bellevue Botanical Garden. It's 53 acres now, multiple gardens, walking trails, a tourist magnet, the pride of the city, and more. It started much smaller with a partnership with the City of Bellevue and the Bellevue Botanical Garden Society. We have an opportunity to create a special attraction here in Sammamish. It appears that Parcel B design of Big Rock Park includes a historical Fried Reed house with space for a heritage garden. The stars are aligned. There are many groups in Sammamish that support the historical home and the heritage gardens. We have the Pine Lake Garden Club, the Sammamish Garden Club, Master Gardeners of King County, the Native Plant Society, the Sammamish Historical Society, and many others. In fact, some members are so willing to help, they've created a new nonprofit group called, guess what? The Sammamish Botanical Garden Society. This group wants to partnership with the city to create our own botanical heritage garden, a place to visit to showcase the history of the Sammamish in the house and the heritage garden for people to enjoy. A wonderful park destination for all ages. Make this happen. Vote to proceed with the funding and development of Parcel B. Thank you. Thank you.
If there's anyone else that would like to address the council, if you can just line up here and then you can go ahead and address us. Unless you're going to speak on the public hearings. There's 2 public hearings. We'll do that public comment later.
Good evening, Hank Klein, 21800 Southeast 28th Street in Sammamish. You know why I stand before you this evening. 1 week ago, the Parks Commission and the City Council held a joint meeting in which several Parks Commissioners expressed support for $3.8 million in funding to complete improvements in Open Big Rock Park Parcel B. In fact, the Parks Commission voted unanimously to recommend this measure. Our comments were respectful and polite, but in the past few days, some of us have grown increasingly concerned that you don't share our recommendation. So I apologize in advance if my comments this evening are something less than respectful and polite. Why would you not approve this funding? There's already money in the park CIP to pay for these improvements. Some of you have advocated for reallocating these dollars for transportation projects. Really? The expected cost of improving Issaquah Pine Lake Road is more than $44 million. So you'd rob parks to pay for less than 10% of this project. Really? Is the city that broke? Do we drastically need to cut our expenses? Not according to the city's most recent newsletter that stated, quote, the city's financial health is strong, with the city manager's proposed budget projecting operating revenues necessary to fully fund continuing operational service for the next 2 years without levying any new taxes. Even more, the city has a significant reserve, higher than any of our neighboring cities. Even more than that, Sammamish has no B&O tax and no utility tax. And even more than that, the city can legally raise taxes 1% a year, but has never done so in its 19-year history. But you'd take money from our parks to pay for transportation? Really? So again, why withhold money from this project? You recently purchased the Beaton property just north of Big Rock Park, 9 acres for just over $6 million. Let's compare that to Big Rock Parcel B, that's nearly twice the size and didn't cost us anything, thanks to the generosity of Mary Pigott. And while the Beaton property will require extensive development and major funding, Big Rock Parcel B is practically a turnkey park with beautiful trails, the Reared Freed House, and an amazing tree house paid for and built by Mary Piggott as an additional gift to the citizens of Sammamish. And you're not willing to invest $3.8 million to complete this park parcel, a cost of little more than half what you paid for Beaton? Really? I wish Mary could have been here this evening. I wonder what she'd be thinking right now. If I were her, I know what I'd be thinking. Disrespectful, ungrateful, short-sighted. I donate 25 acres of my park-like property in the middle of the city to the citizens of Sammamish and build a treehouse for $750,000 for their enjoyment, and you're unwilling to fund the remaining improvements at a reasonable cost with money that has been set aside for this purpose, even though you're telling us the city is financially sound. And I'd be thinking that even though I promised to donate the final 15 acres of my property where I currently live, and certainly the most valuable piece of this entire park for its amenities and general access from Southeast 20th, I'd be thinking that I might have to reconsider that. Next week, the city is hosting a volunteer appreciation dinner. Even though I've served on the Parks Commission for more than twice as long as any of you have served on the City Council, I won't be attending because I don't feel appreciated. So I hope you'll think long and hard about this proposal, and when it's time to cast your vote, I'd like you to pretend that Mary Piggott is sitting right here this evening. And when it's time to cast your vote, I'd like you to smile and look her right in the eye and then vote yes in order to honor the citizens and Mary Piggott. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I wanted to comment on the condemnation ordinance. Is this the right time?
No, so we have not unless you want it to be on the public record, because we have the public hearing for that specifically. So if you want to hold off and make your comments during the public hearing, they'll be part of the public record. You can make them now if you choose, but they will not be part of that record.
Hi, Karen Herring, 23684 Southeast 32nd Way. I'm just here to ask you to please authorize city manager to execute the contract with KPG to plan and design Big Rock Site B. This gift of Big Rock to our citizens has a plan, and, the RFP has selected the contract. Please respect that process, the recommendations from staff, Parks and Recreation, and the wishes of your citizens and the gifter. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Sorry, I need to get back to my agenda here. Okay, I would entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
So moved. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, by a vote of 7-0, the consent calendar is approved. Okay, next we have presentations and proclamations. Do we have Deb Sogi here? Yep, okay. So we're going to do a proclamation for Small Business Saturday. Deb, would you like to read that proclamation?
I don't know, it's your proclamation, Mayor.
Well, no, but I would get up and walk it to you, but, you know.
So the mayor and council have written this proclamation for Small Business Saturday coming up this week, and I'm going to read it to you, so listen carefully so we can follow it. Whereas the government of Sammamish, Washington celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community. According to the United States Small Business Administration, there are currently 30.2 million small businesses in the United States, so online isn't driving them off yet. They represent 99.7% of all businesses with employees in the United States, are responsible for 65.9% of net new jobs created from 2000 to 2017, and whereas small businesses employ 47.5% 90% of the employees in the private sector in the United States. And whereas 90% of consumers in the United States say Small Business Saturday has had a positive effect or impact on their community. And whereas 89% of consumers who are aware of Small Business Saturday said the day encourages them to shop small all year long. And whereas 73% of consumers reportedly shop small at independently owned retailers and restaurants on Small Business Saturday did so with friends or family. And whereas the most reported reason for consumers aware of the day to shop and dine at small independently owned businesses was to support their community. And whereas Sammamish, Washington supports our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our communities. And whereas, I'm almost done, and whereas advocacy groups, as well as public and private organizations across the country, have endorsed this Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Now, therefore, I, Christy Malchow, raise your hand, Christy, Mayor of Sammamish, Washington, on behalf of Sammamish City Council, do hereby proclaim Small Business Saturday, November 24th, 2018, as Small Business Saturday, and urge the residents of our community and communities across the country to support business and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. Signed, Mayor Malchow. Thank you, City. This is an honor to receive, and I do want to point out that I've noticed just lately when we've added more restaurants, the community is abuzz with people going to restaurants. So I think our citizens already are pretty loyal about trying to support local dining in and local retail, and I just encourage them to show that respect this Saturday and tell your business, thank you for being here. And thank you, City. This is an honor.
Thank you, Deb. Okay, our next order of business is approval of the contract for Big Rock Park, Site B. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, this is a question whether you wish to direct me to execute a contract with KPG Interdisciplinary Design for planning and design services for Phase 1 at Big Rock Park Site B. This Phase 1 improvements consist of a diverse set of improvements necessary to open the site to the public, and those are outlined in your agenda bill. I know that the council is aware, and I know that they appreciate the generous donation of Mary Piggott of this park. This site is almost a turnkey park that's been donated to the city. It has built and maintained trails. It has meadow areas. It has a maintenance road. It has fencing. And of course, it has the tree house as well. With the improvements, we are talking about this is strong of a developed park as one would get. The other improvements are estimated cost of $3.3 million for the improvements. This equates to about $165,000 per acre to provide this park, which is a considerable bag given the cost of vacant land that becomes park and what it takes to develop that. Also, this landowner intends to donate another 16 contiguous acres, which will provide much needed access to this park. Per council's direction at your last meeting, we have reduced we've reduced the budget or the project cost by $500,000. You also have in your agenda packet, the council asked us at the last meeting to answer 5 questions. You will find a memo in there from Ms. Fesser, which answers those particular questions, as well as there's also a memo in there which outlines the budget and how these dollars are arrived at. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Fesser to, I think she has a slide presentation to walk you through a few more aspects of this particular park.
Do I have to change that here? So I do that again. Start slide. Good evening, Mayor Malchow, members of the council, City Manager Patterson, members of the audience. My name is Angie Fester. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director. I'm joined this evening by Shelby Peralt, Parks Project Manager, who will be assisting me tonight as well. This is a follow-up meeting to a presentation that we gave the council on October 1, responding to some questions that were asked and also requesting a few things from council this evening. The overview, I'm going to quickly review the project, especially for members of the audience, some of the changes to the project resulting from council input, and then we're also going to cover the park CIP kind of in general and drill into the funding specific to this project as requested by council at the last meeting. But basically tonight we're requesting council's consideration to authorize a design contract to move forward to eventually open this park in 2020. So real quickly, I'm going to kind of do an overview of the park and the parcels that are north and south to that. In 2010, Mary Pickett, who we've heard mentioned this evening, gave a very generous donation and intent to donate 3 parcels of land to the city in a phased approach. Site A was donated in 2011. And then in 2014, a master plan was developed for both Site A and B together. And in 2016, construction of that plan occurred and the park was then open to the public, which is Parcel A. Parcel B, which we're focused on this evening, is 20 acres. In 2012, the Reared Freed House was actually relocated to the site. Before the parcel came to the city in 2017, and this year we did start design development on the project. And then Site C to the south is contiguous 15 acres, which will be a future donation and prospective development. It's a key piece in that it is located on Southeast 20th, where a majority of the access to the remainder of the park will occur. So just real quickly, there are some existing structures on the 20 acres. 3 of those actually will be demolished due to not having structural integrity or not being of value to investment of refurbishing them. The detached garage on the site, the existing Tanner house that is considerably old and built on cedar foundation, and as well as a sauna and laundry building. What will be retained, however, is the tree house, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit more detail, as well as the Reared Freed House, which we've heard about tonight as well. So just kind of to highlight the tree house here, let me catch up with my notes. As mentioned earlier by Hank, the treehouse was built by Mary Pickett and was identified in Site P during the master plan process, but we didn't know the extent of the treehouse until it was finished later. As you can see by these photos, the treehouse is actually secured within 3 large cedars. It has a boardwalk, a tension bridge, and a gathering room, which has an occupancy of about 12 to 16 people, and is quite an impressive feature. In addition, the Reared Freed House, as we talked about a little bit earlier, was built in about 1895. Donated to the city in 2001 from a different place and was relocated to this site in 2012 in the condition you see in the upper slide. And today you can see in the lower right-hand side the condition of the house, a considerable amount of work. In 2014, the city entered into an agreement with the Sammamish Heritage Society, who has done a tremendous amount of work on this facility to bring it up to the way it looks now and has a lot of momentum going with grants and future plans. Over the years, the city has contributed about $135,000 towards this project, and the Heritage Society has been responsible for nearly $400,000 worth of grants and private donations, and not to mention all the blood, sweat, and tears that go into it that aren't accounted for in those dollars. So more than $500,000 invested in that facility, that house already. And I believe is the only historical landmarked house or building in the city of Sammamish.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I believe. Is that true? Yes, it is. The only landmarked historic Angie, building. I've got a couple of questions up here if we can. Sure. Okay. Councilmember Ritchie.
I'll defer till after the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Moran.
And ma'am was back onto the treehouse. When we had the tour, you had said that she had built the treehouse for her grandchildren. Do you know what year that was built in?
2015, the house was built.
Okay. And do you know, so do her grandchildren, I mean, do they live in the area? I'm looking at it kind of for historical reasons for the keeping of the treehouse, I guess. I'm looking at it a little bit differently, I guess.
Right.
As the preservation of the treehouse for something for historical for the family who donated the treehouse. So I'm looking at it from that standpoint, and I'm just trying to figure out a little bit more of a way to preserve it and save it for, I'm not sure I'm not sure I'm sold on having it open, without having somebody there to care for it, as it was built for, her grandchildren. So that's
Absolutely.
my only concern.
Right. It is, I would call it commercial grade treehouse. This isn't the standard treehouse that you would envision as we all experienced it. It's very structurally sound. It's built for heavy use. She also built it for the intent, knowing that she was going to donate the property to the city and that it was going to be used by the public. So that's why, if you notice how much it has engineering and the steel structure underneath it and how heavily built it is. So. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks, Angie. Oh, nope, just got another one. Councilmember Valderrama.
You were saying that when Mary had this bill, knowing it was going to come to the city, you had earlier said that you were informed that it was done later after you weren't incorporated into the planning. So for that treehouse, I know it doesn't have cable in it to watch cable TV or that. Is it able to handle projectors or that? I know we were looking at one of the rooms as a meeting room. Would it be able to handle audio visual or?
Right. So we would run power to it. We know that, and we have conduit in this park project. In the improvements, it does trench out utilities, not water, but electricity, and we could probably do other cable at the same time. The room does seat 16 to 18 people, and it could be capable of definitely having audio visual.
And would that ride on the Heritage Society utilities? So would it be coming in the power through
Correct.
that access? And so
Yeah.
you would need that to take place for later to consider to have it and utilize it for actual meetings or stuff.
Right, absolutely.
So without that, however, it's not really functional for a meeting room without having that power done.
Right, unless you don't want to have
Unless
any
you have
AV
flashlights.
equipment. Yeah, flashlights or headlights or,
Thank you.
lamps, lanterns, or just sunlight works too. Okay, great, ready? All right, so moving on, I'm just going to kind of run through the park project just as a review and for the audience members here as well. So we kind of have some things happening on the north end and the south end, but primarily the phase one improvements identified through the 2014 master plan are pretty significant, and some of the highlighted amenities include on the southern end, 250 linear feet of a half-street construction to provide access to the site, as well as parking and utilities as some of the top items that we have. But you can see the list here. I'm not going to necessarily read through them. We're going to kind of dig into them individually as we work through the site. So on the north end, we will have some access, secondary park access, that we will provide 3 parallel parking spaces on 221st. It's pedestrian access only through this space, but it does help alleviate some of the parking need and provide access on the northern edge to the park rather than having to go all the way down through the south side. Moving down to the south end, the most developed end of that. So 220 serves as the primary access and is required to have a half street built and with a road, curb, gutter, a sidewalk, lighting, stormwater treatment, and landscaping. And this piece right here that we're looking at actually costs about $500,000 to build to provide access into the park. We have private property owners on each side of this right-of-way, and we're working with the neighbors to deal with some issues about their access to their property, because currently they have a driveway that crosses over this right-of-way. So we've already met with them on site and started conversations with them about what that will look like and the restoration when we finish this project for their access. The parking lot will accommodate 12 vehicles. There's also a vehicular travel route through the South Meadow, which is a one-way drive to kind of reduce the impact of pervious surface. You can see this here highlighted in the red dashed line. We also have just to the west of that created some space for school bus or van parking in case we have a school group come to visit. And we also have a lot of accessible trails throughout the buildings and the amenities. This area of the park actually kind of highlights our community partners who spoke a little earlier tonight. The Sammamish Heritage Society is using the Reared Freed House for a couple of purposes. The first floor is a museum and a meeting room space, and the second floor they're going to use for office space and artifact storage, as well as the attic. It's important to note, though, that the proposed project that we're here in front of you tonight does not include any improvements to the house. So at the walls of the house, the improvements stop, and that's all the Heritage Society's work. Another group that we've just started talking to is the Sammamish Botanical Gardens Society to help us construct and plant and maintain the heritage garden and use their expertise to help us fulfill that area and maintain that. The city would build the fencing, the paths, the irrigation for the area, but we would work with the Botanical Garden Society to figure out the plantings and utilize some of their help to do that work and do the lighter maintenance work on that as well. So a fantastic opportunity for partnership as well. In addition to the site, we will be installing a prefabricated restroom with 2 restroom areas and storage. Originally, we had proposed a maintenance and storage area, but at the council's direction at the October 1 meeting, we actually eliminated that. And then I want to talk about some of the feedback we received from the council during the October 1st meeting and the changes to the project that reflect that. So this table kind of talks about the different costs associated with the project here. Basically, the master plan design elements are in there for about 1.4. The right-of-way that I talked about, the street improvement, about $500,000. Then we have state tax that goes in there, utility connection fees, and some contingency and soft costs, including design and construction, administration and studies, and all those other pieces that go with it. We came forward to the council with 4 elements that we asked for direction on, if they wanted those included into the project or not. The ADA ramp for the treehouse got a nod from the council, so it's still in there. However, if council would prefer, we can actually break it out as an alternative to the bid for the construction project as well, but we will proceed with the design of that. The council supported not including the maintenance building, so we've removed that. The utility connections for the Reared Freed House were supported by the council, and the council did not necessarily support the additional trail work on the northern end of the parcels. However, we do request $50,000 for a bridge/dam on a pond in kind of the northeast corner of the park that does need some engineering and work enabled to provide access to that. So we did leave that piece in there. The rest of the trail work can be done through other methods and ways. So with the removal of those 2 items, it drops the price down to about $3.3 million. So we've, in essence, shaved off about $450,000 in the project at the direction of the council.
Angie, I have a question, clarification on the maintenance building. I think I was the one that asked about that maintenance building originally, and it wasn't that we necessarily wanted to eliminate it. And there's an answer in the council packet, but I want to kind of clarify that, because
Yes.
what we had asked is, can we use the maintenance building that exists already on parcel A? Correct. And I think your answer was yes.
Yes.
But at the time, it's open on 2 sides, you said. So Well, I don't know. I think her answer was 2 sides, but it may be 1 side. At any rate, it wasn't completely closed in. So I think the question was, could we use that? So I know in the answer it says you just need to widen the path a little bit so that the equipment can pass between the 2 parcels.
Right.
But are we to anticipate that we will need to spend some money to close in that facility then, since it's open, or not?
Right. So the building on parcel A is actually of 2 different components. It has a lean-to shed as part of it, but it does have an enclosed area. So we deemed using the structure on parcel A, it's good enough at this point. There's a little bit of hauling back and forth. It's, half a mile from point to point, but it's doable, right? So we decided that for the price of a new building, we'd be willing to kind of make those adjustments and concessions to make it happen.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that clarification. And then I wanted to get a little bit of clarification on the trail restoration. And sorry, you're going to have to jog my memory, because there was the trail restoration, but then you were also going to basically be closing down some trails. If memory serves, they were running on the very sides. Where is that in this?
Right. So we do have some perimeter trails that are pretty close to neighbors, and we're trying to be respectful of that. Plus, there are some trails that are kind of duplicate, right, that they run parallel to each other. So there's the intent of decommissioning trails. It reduces maintenance and it makes a better effective system. We feel we would have liked to have done the work while we were on site and have it all done with this project, but using WTA contract that we have, using volunteers, using some of our park maintenance, we feel like we can make those improvements so that that trail system will be accessible and usable when the park opens.
Okay.
So
thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Let's see. It's like Councilmember Hornish.
4 questions. What's the increased operating expense from Parks and Rec, not on the capital side, but on the operating side, by doing this capital improvement?
Right. So right now, we spend about $20,000 a year right now to maintain this park, even though it's closed. With the prevailing wage changes in 2019, that is increased by 120%, so it will be approximately $44,000 if the park is closed. Based on those numbers and our research, we figure it'll be about $95,000 with all the improvements in place.
So roughly 50,000 incremental per year. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, so if this were open, how much would the maintenance be for?
About $95,000.
For both, for A and B, or?
Just B. We're talking about just B.
Ooh.
So
And
currently,
A is what, 40-ish?
Right. Next year, parcel B being closed will be $44,000.
Okay. Second question. We heard some concerns about how Mary Piggott may be viewing this. Has anybody talked to her?
So we did have a conversation with Mary 2-3 weeks ago. We walked her site with her on Site C and talked to her a little bit, but she didn't seem to say much one way or the other. Unfortunately, we were rushed a little bit for time and weren't able to really get into that discussion. She is out of the country and traveling back today. Otherwise, she said she probably would have been at the meeting tonight.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Third question, and I know this will be an unpopular one with the group we have here tonight, but I'm going to ask it. If we were to reallocate the REIT, is there funding in the current Parks and Rec CIP that could be pulled out of the CIP that's there in the ending fund balance and reallocated to the streets? Or is it only that we can do that on a go-forward basis?
So are you asking, can we retroactively pull REIT?
Yeah, if there's $5 million in there that came from REIT, can that money be pulled out and reallocated to streets? That's the first question. The second question is, can we even do that for 1920, since we've approved the budget? Can we reallocate it for 1920? Or if we were to even visit and consider that, is it only for 21, 22 and beyond that we could even get that money reallocated?
Right. So I may refer to the financial experts in the back of the room, but for the time being, we right now have 2.2 million in REIT for 2018. because we have spent some of the REIT that we accumulated for acquisition. We have what are called restricted funds. I actually have a little bit more of this in the slide to come. But we have some restricted funds that we spend first, right? That they have timing requirements, they have requirements about how they are spent, and REIT is one of them. So we've spent the collected REIT up until this point.
And we have a balance of about 2.2 left then?
For this year, for 2018.
But
annually,
do we have any from prior years, do you know?
that has been spent.
That's been spent, so
Right.
it's only a 2.2 balance. Okay, that's
Right now.
helpful. Okay.
But moving forward, we have about 3.2 per year for REIT. So if the REIT funds were used for other capital projects, we would still have enough in the park CIP to do this project, though. And you'll see that here in a little bit.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see that, but I mean, you're reallocating it from things that you wanted to do before to get to do this, right? So
Right.
at some point, we're going to have to still pay for it, I would think.
Right.
If, and this is a hypothetical, if we were to do only an optional versus the required, could we do the utility connections by itself? And now I realize that that probably doesn't suffice for some of the grants because it has to be open to the public, right? Am I confused?
Right, yeah. You could run utilities to the house. It'd probably closer to 120,000 if you broke them out by themselves, if not a little bit more. So it's just not the 81,000 you see here on the slide.
No, it's 120 already.
I'm sorry, 121 down below. But we also
yeah.
have some utility connection fees up above at 81,000 as well. So we also
the required,
have water.
I'm sorry, okay, to get
Right.
it there and then to get it to the house. Okay, I
Right.
see what you're
So we
saying.
have water, electricity. We have to rebuild a septic system on site. The existing one is failing. So that in order to have a restroom in the building, we have to install that as well.
But I'm even trying to break that down further. I mean, given some of the public comments, could we not just do the electricity and not the water and sewer? Or septic? Sorry.
Yeah, I believe what the Heritage Society was kind of asking on the electricity to start is so that they can finish their construction work
Right,
with more
and I'm
power.
focused on that, and I'm thinking
that's
that
kind of-
makes sense.
Yeah, phase one, I'd almost
Right.
call it. We have power on the site currently. Obviously, we have a house there in a well house, so we do have power on the site, but it sounds like that they want 220 rather than 110.
Which would be a lead to it and a connection.
Right.
But we could do that separately, is what you're,
Right.
that's
I
my
think we
question.
could, yeah.
Without the water connection, but without other utilities, we could do just the electricity if we wanted to.
Correct. And then to keep the house open, you'd have a porta potty, is what you would use.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Jason, your light's still on. Are you wanting to speak or you want to still wait?
I would like to wait until the presentation's complete. Thank you.
All right, just want to check. Councilmember Ross.
Just clarification, on slide 3, we talk about 2018 anticipated revenue from REIT of 2.2 million. Then I look at the detailed breakout on slide 1, and it says 3,200,000 contributes to the 18 total revenue for the year. Which is correct? Or is it 2.2 in 18, and is the 4.8 million of anticipated revenue in 18 overstated by $1 million, or is the table below, should it reflect 3.2? And I heard you say 2.2 is the first year, 18, then it goes up to 3.2 subsequently.
Right. Okay. So you're talking about the agenda packet, correct?
Yes.
Page 3 of
Yes.
the agenda packet, not the slide.
That's
'Cause
correct.
That threw me off to
I'm
start
sorry,
with. So,
sorry.
yeah.
Agenda packet. Ugh.
So page 3 or page 91 of the packet, we annually get 3.2 million a year in REIT. However, we spent 7 million in acquisition, or this year, beaten parcel of 6 million being one of those. So we used previous REIT plus $1 million from REIT
Thank you.
this year.
That's clear. Thanks.
Right. So that's the difference.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead, Angie, sorry.
So we're just going to move into some more information here, responding to some of the questions the council has had tonight, but it was also having on October 1. So we're just going to kind of roll through this. I wanted to highlight some of this information in a general capacity. So when we say Parks CIP, we mean the Parks Capital Improvement Plan. And inside of that, we have a handful of 7 revenue sources that we utilize, and they're listed here. So REIT 1 is the first one that we're going to talk about. Like I said, about $3.2 million a year, 60% of the revenue funding in the Parks CIP. It's earmarked for capital improvement projects, including parks, and can be used for land acquisition. Unlike REIT 2. REIT 2 is a little bit different. It's actually also 25% real estate excise tax. We currently earmark REIT 2 for transportation right now. It can be used for park projects, but it could not be used for land acquisition. The rest of the revenue sources are earmarked for parks specifically. So the REIT can be used for transportation if the council does so desire, and I believe requires a change in ordinance to do that, but it can happen. But park impact fees are the one-time charges assessed against new development to maintain our existing level of service for our park facilities. And that money can go for acquisitions, development, and but not operations and maintenance. But that also does have a 10-year time requirement on that. If those park impact fees are not spent in 10 years, they actually go back to the developer. The King County levy funding, we had a presentation just last week from King County about the new parks levy to be renewed in 2020. We collect about $160,000 a year for that. That can be used for improvements, but not land acquisition for parks. We have some investment interests that are earmarked for the money that's saved for parks revenue. We also have mitigation fees for projects such as Canterbury, the Toll Brothers Woodhaven Canterbury Park, which is a project that's outside of city limits but impacts our city, so we have a mitigation fee for that. We also have the King County TDRs, which is in agreement with the county that brings in development rights into the town center, but the parks is earmarked $20,000 for each one of those credits that is sold, and that is earmarked for only for parkland acquisition. So each one of these kind of have a little twist to them. And then, of course, and any grants that we are eligible and are able to get are part of our funding sources. So our revenue for each year is about 4.8, and that varies each year with a couple of reasons, but that's our general revenue source per year moving forward. So I just want to kind of snapshot to the park CIP overall. And just taking, for example, this year we started with about 17 million. We brought in a revenue of 4.8, but we made some expenditures. A big one was Beaton Parcel at 6 million, plus some small capital projects as well. Our ending fund balance is at about 15 million at the end of the year, which means we start in 2019 with that. The Big Rock Park project expenditures would actually expand over 19 and 20 as well. And if you notice, even with our anticipated revenue and expenditures, we still have an ending fund balance of about 8.4 million at the end of 2020. And this is provided that we do every single project on our capital plan, which can be challenging because there's quite a few numbers of those. But that's a conservative estimate of where we'll land in a couple of years.
Can I ask a clarifying question there? Mm-hmm. So you said that assumes we do every capital project. Does it also assume that we spend the rest, or at least the $1 million that we allocated each year for property acquisition as well? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, Christy, could I ask a question?
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
So if I understand those numbers correctly, what you're saying is that we have enough money in funds that can only be spent on parks and cannot be reallocated to anything else to cover this and probably more projects than we can actually get done in the 2019-2020 period. So if we don't do this project, then we would just have money sitting in our budget that we couldn't spend on something else. Is that correct?
Yes and no. The REIT funds are part of the revenue source in here. So the REIT funds could be used for other things, but the other 6 remaining funding sources are earmarked specifically for parks. So if you pulled REIT out at 3.2 a year, and then you'd end up subtracting that from your, your ending fund balance.
Right.
The other point I do want to make, though, as Councilmember Hornish mentioned earlier about, well, if you pulled money out, and then you have other projects you may not do. I want to ignore that for just a second, but I'll point out later that our parks list, our capital projects list, that this project is the second highest priority of all of our 19 projects that we have listed out in our CIP. So it's a priority project. So what would happen is projects lower on the list would not happen.
Right. So I was going to say, if we don't spend the money on this, what are we going to go spend it on? And it sounds like what you're saying is something that was deemed based on the PRO plan as less important.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Valderrama.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the presentation of the work that's going on. And you had mentioned that it's your second highest priority.
Right.
Who prioritized that?
We work through that through the PRO plan and the Parks Commission. We work through the capital plan.
Yeah, but it was not the council who went and did that priority.
We didn't go through project by project, but it was adopted by the council and the PRO plan.
But we did not prioritize. The council did not sit down and say this
Correct.
is our priority. I just want to clarify that.
Yep.
The other thing was I'd seen there, and I'm trying to find out where I had highlighted. I thought that one of the ways that you were looking at funding this was reprioritizing some of your projects and moving them out to later years that you had included here. I can't find it at this moment in time.
Yeah, East Sammamish Park improvements, the playground and the parking lot total $1,165,000. So that was an example of a project that was on the CIP, but we have not spun it up yet because of the Margaret Mead remodel in the park.
Okay.
So there's funding that was kind of pushed out a couple of years for that project that would cover the additional cost of this project.
But that project is still slated to be done, so we're still going to pay that piper.
Right.
Is one I was going to get to. The third one, just to make sure, and obviously I had asked and copied you on the message, was in addition to the funds that we're talking from the parks here, the parks is still receiving from the general fund some $10 million from the general fund coming over to help parks. I think it was 10.6% of it. And so what you're showing here is just the parks funding that's paying for this, but you still are receiving the general fund money to supplement the operations, obviously not the capital.
Absolutely. The general fund monies that the Parks Department receives that you refer to are for operations. So maintenance of our parks, professional services that we use, the special events that we do, a lot of the work that we provide. So, but capital funding is different than this, and this is the capital budget that we're looking at.
Just to clarify that, because there was a sense that this was fully funded and operational but no, the capital is what you're talking about. We would still need money from the general fund to be coming out to pay for this project. And I just wanted to clarify that because there seems to be a misconception on that issue. Additionally, going back early on, I was going back to the original presentation of the first parcel of Big Rock Park, and at that point there was a master plan that was being presented. I believe it was $4.2 million if all those pieces were being done. And the maintenance and operation at that time that we were being told for the maintenance of that park was $400,000 was the anticipated one. And so now we're talking about what would be for the two sites, the maintenance annually that we would be looking at. If that was at that point $400,000, it sounds like you're now estimating that it would be less. And if so, why would it be less than what the original plan was?
Right. So the 2014 master plan estimated the cost of both parcels improvement at $4 million, right? So I'm not quite sure where the 10% maintenance cost is coming from, because $400,000 a year.
That was what was told to us at that time. And that's why I was curious, what would now your number's much lower, and so that's why we're trying to understand why the difference in that maintenance.
And I'm not quite certain if that was part of the master plan and the master plans are very loose. They're very high-level planning documents, right? So at those times you tend to estimate a little bit higher on that. I don't know the history of why 10% was used as the rule of thumb on that, but now that we've maintained our parks for a number of years and we have this dialed in, we have actual numbers, we have numbers of what we are paying right now for both A and B, and so our numbers are tighter, right? And we use contracted services for that. So it's pretty easy to break those numbers out and provide those. I can't explain the difference between 400,000 and if it's a 150,000 for these two parcels. We can get numbers for parcel A and see what the maintenance is on those.
Well, I do recall that Mary Piggott said she paid more for maintenance than she did on property tax on those parcels. And so that was the other thing that jived in my mind. And then finally, the former mayor, Lee Felling, council member, that was always his caution, was to watch the maintenance or that'll eat you guys alive. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, all right. So now I do get to hit the buttons here. So I want to talk about the difference in numbers, right? Because we started at 2.2 and now we're at 3.3. How did we get there and why are they there? And earlier this year, the council graciously approved 2.2 million for the project during the adoption of the Pro Plan, and that estimate was based on the 2014 master plan, which was still pretty loose and pretty high level. Since then, we started digging into it, right? We started investigating and doing research into the site, and some things have changed since 2014 as well. So some of the additional costs I just wanted to highlight here. As I mentioned earlier, the street improvements, the half road that we have to build for 250 linear feet, and that's about $500,000 with all of that infrastructure that needs to happen. We have a new septic system we have to build, and we are going to be required to decommission the existing well, and then we have to bring in water to the site. The utility connections for the reared feed house, just the electrical alone is $110,000 to bring that into the site and to the house. The new stormwater regulations impact us about $155,000. In addition, we have an on-site water distribution system that we have to do at about $70,000. So those are pieces of this project that were not picked up in the master plan, right? Because we hadn't dug into the site very well at that time, which is typical of a master plan, right? It's kind of how are you going to generally use the site? And then when you get into design development, you start doing these studies, you start doing the research, you start doing the homework and making decisions about what you're going to do into the site. So that is kind of the result of why we have a difference of almost $1.2 million from our conversation earlier this year. So I just wanted to bring that to the council's attention and explain some of that. And then just kind of wrapping this up a little bit. Again, here's the park CIP, just the top 8 projects, but we have 19 projects listed in the Pro Plan. And the Big Rock Park is listed here as number 2. Mystic Lake, 600 linear feet of trail is number 1 because we're close to getting it done. But Big Rock Park is right up here on top. It's one of the top priorities. It's in the A category of projects, and so it is one of our top contenders. One of the decisions to put this in the A group or the priority group is that the return on investment here for the $3.3 million to provide 20 acres of park is $165,000 an acre, where a lot of park projects are millions of dollars per acre to buy the land and open. So we thought this was important because of that return on investment, basically. So the timeline, if you choose to move forward, with the approval of the contract tonight, we move into construction documents and permitting through the fall of this year and winter of 19. It'll take about a year to do that. And then we come back to you after we open it up for bid, and we come back to the council in spring of 2020 for you to bless and approve the contract to move forward in construction. So again, another opportunity to review this project and decide if you want to move forward. If there are things you want to eliminate or keep in or add to it, that's your prerogative at that time. And then if all goes well, construction in 2020 with hopefully finishing in late 2020. So that's kind of wraps up the presentation. We just again ask for council's consideration for approval of the contract to move forward for the design services.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Thank you. I wanted to wait to the end so I could hear everything, and a lot of my questions were answered on the way, so thank you. Just want to start off by thanking Angie and the Parks and Recreation staff for being diligent on this and essentially getting a really good grasp of what the public's priorities are. I know you guys went out of your way to reach out and to listen, and that's how we got here. This is not just something that was made up. This is an opportunity that was given to us by Mary Piggott, but it was something that the citizens, through your outreach, made clear that it was important to them. I think it's an incredibly important asset. The Parks Commission, thank you guys for the time and energy you put into, again, listening and then presenting this information to Angie and the Parks and Rec staff and to us, and to being accessible to us. So when we ask questions, you guys have done the deep dives on this, and I really appreciate you taking the time and the commitment to invest in the critical things like parks that we really care about, or we profess to care about in this city. The Sammamish Heritage Society, the Shed family, the time and energy you guys have put into the Rear Freed House, amazing. And it's an asset. It's the only landmark in our city, the only historical landmark in our city. That's incredible. So I think it's something we really need to cherish and honor and frankly invest into. That to me is part of what we're here to do as a council. The Botanical Gardens groups, there were a couple of them, so I don't want to miss anybody, but I'm just going to kind of throw a blanket around saying Botanical Gardens groups. If you've ever been to the Wilburton Gardens in Bellevue, amazing. You take your family. It's totally worth it, whether it's rain or shine. It is such a beautiful place. If we could get close to that in Sammamish, the whole time I was walking through with my family, I'm thinking, how amazing would it be if we had something like that in Sammamish? And bang, here we are, a perfect location, a group ready to set it up. We can have that here too. So I'm super excited about that part. And above all, I want to thank Mary Piggott for the word generosity. I don't think can convey how incredible this gift is to the city. This is not a gift to her children or to an heir. This is a gift to the citizens of a city she cares about deeply. And I think, much to what Commissioner Klein said, we need to, though she can't be here right now, I think I picture her here right now and thinking what she's thinking. And I think we need to be very respectful of that as we're moving forward, while we're being respectful of taxpayer dollars as well. But the value, as Commissioner Gupta said, I don't know how you can ever find this kind of value anywhere else in the free market. So I think we're very lucky to have this opportunity, and I just want to say thank you to Mary Piggott for the opportunity to be able to utilize this land for public good. So I'll say this, we have the resources to get this done. Through the Parks Commission, the Parks and Rec staff, they have been very conservative about where they've spent the resources, and we have the resources to get this done right now. We're not asking for any additional money. This isn't about a tax burden. This is about committing public resources to something that we profess to care about, a publicly available park. If not this, then what? The public, the use and enjoyment by the public of this facility, of Site B, Site A, B, and C, the whole thing, but Site B for now, is, in my mind at least, well worth the capital expenses that are going to go into this. I think that's the upkeep is, this is what we're here to do as public servants. My family's going to enjoy it, and I want it to be nice, so it's going to cost some ongoing maintenance to keep it up. To me, that's a reasonable thing for a city to do. So I don't have a problem with that personally. I think that's a good, wise investment. So in that regard, I move that we ask the city manager to award consultant services for Big Rock Site B Phase 1 improvements, planning and design to KPG Interdisciplinary Design, and a full budget of $3,384,200, and that includes all the additional optional costs.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I suspect we still have more questions and stuff too, but Councilmember Hornish.
I'll defer.
Okay. I have some questions that I still wanted to get answered, if that's okay with you. I was just curious about the square footage of the Heritage Garden, approximately. I mean, we've got a, is that?
Wait, is it 100 by 100? Yeah, I think it's roughly 100 by 100.
Okay, and then the 3 parallel parking spots that are up in the Lancaster Ridge, is there anything that would prevent or prohibit other cars from parking there? I mean, the only reason I ask is, sensitivity to the neighbors that are there, and I suspect there might be more than 3 cars that end up going up there, and will more than 3 cars be able to park there, I guess is really my question.
Right. We would sign it appropriately for no parking outside of that, and then the neighbors would obviously have the ability to call police and enforce that if that was an issue or problem for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one more parking question, because the treehouse, I think, is such a draw for people, especially those with young kids. Knowing my kids, we're not parking at parcel A and walking through parcel A to get to it. We're parking at parcel B, and there's only 11 regular spots, 1 ADA spot, at least according to the graphic.
Right.
I suspect that lot's going to be full often. Are we going to allow parking on Southeast 16th Place then? I would hope that we're not going to sign that for no parking, because if we're going to spend $3.38 million for a park, I want people to be able to go to it, and I don't want to prevent them from going to it because we just put out a whole bunch of no parking signs. So are we going to allow people to park there?
Right. On 16th, I think we could allow that. 16th is...
So that's not the right-of-way that we would be expanding. That's the street that you would drive up to then turn left down that drive.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so. We probably would. We also designed the parking lot to be very flexible. So if you notice, the east end of the parking lot is open and opens out into that meadow area.
Okay.
So if we decided to we had some issues, we started programming the treehouse, and we knew that maybe once a month we were going to have it open on the weekend, and we know there's going to be a big turnout, we can flex that space into additional parking for that. So we planned accordingly for that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but nothing would prevent someone from parking in that meadow then, if they so chose, or will there be a gate there?
It'll be It'll be gated and fenced.
Okay.
So,
I just want to make sure people can go to the park, right? That they don't drive there and there's no parking signs everywhere and the lot's full, and
yeah.
Then their kids start throwing a tantrum in the back seat, which happens often in my car.
No, that never happens.
So the other question I have is relative to the treehouse as well. I assume there's got to be some type of capacity. How do we envision preventing masses of people up there, right? I mean, kids like on the tension bridge, I'm trying to envision how we're going to do that.
Right. So there's a couple of ways to go about that. Part of our work moving forward would be a programming discussion about the treehouse. Everything from keeping it closed off and just for rentals, everything to wide open, right? Or anything in between. And some of the conversations even talks about, well, do we have a staff person on site to kind of regulate things? This is also like a brand new play structure, right, at a playground, that you got a really cool feature and kids are showing up, and it self-regulates, right? You don't have kids climbing all over each other on the play structure. It regulates itself. But this does have a little bit of access difference to it, right? That it's only a walkway that you can get through. So I think to address this, it's going to have to be some programming to help address some of that and regulate that. But we would be, over the course of the next year, working with the Parks Commission and the council to figure out what that programming is going to look like.
Okay. Well, I would certainly hope, though, while I understand the value of programming to kind of help tamper down the, overrun of kids in it, again, it's such a cool amenity that I want to be sure that the kids can get in there, and nothing is worse than showing up to something and like, oh, it's closed, right? That's awful. So I hope the Parks Commission would at least consider that kids want to be able to access that. So if you're looking at programming, that it will be important that they have access to it, and it's not whether, and I understand the concern of having a staff person from an operations standpoint, right? Because that costs money to have a staff person staying there all the time. But hopefully we can work through something where there's access for people.
Yeah, and there's also 19.8 acres of other amenities. There's water down below, which means, some fun things, some boardwalks, trails, the Reared Freed House. So there are some other amenities there to hopefully
I get it, but when you're 6, that is your feature.
That's the thing, right there. Absolutely.
Okay.
I re-pushed my button, so
I gotcha.
Can I get in the queue as well?
Okay, I'll put you in the queue.
Okay.
Thank you.
The question I have is, if we were to approve this motion in this contract, it's 3.3 roughly, right?
3.3, yes. 3.3.
It would still come back to council for the bid, correct?
Right. So Actually, just a slight correction on that. We're asking for the contract tonight, which is $253,000. So we're not necessarily asking for the authority of the 3.3. We're saying we're projecting the project to be 3.3, but tonight we're just asking for $253,000 for the contract. So
I'm glad I asked that question because that's not
Right.
kind of what I thought the motion was.
just
Okay,
the
yeah.
contract tonight. And then the next step is when we're done with construction documents and the bidding process, we will be back in front of you, if not a couple times before. But you will ultimately make the decision about the construction moving forward and how much is spent on construction.
And Big Rock A, preliminary estimates and bids. Do you remember the factor? I recall it being about 2x of what the prelim was.
So I believe we have an estimate here of just a hair under 3 million. Is that correct?
No,
Site-
for A, for
Site A.
Site A.
Were you talking overall cost for Site A or Phase 1 improvements at Site A?
The earlier stuff that was done 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
My
got it.
recollection was the prelim was about half of what it ended up being at bid.
So the phase 1 estimate was about 550,000. The actual construction costs were about 670,000.
That doesn't sound right.
That
I
doesn't sound
remember
right.
sitting in the back
No,
of the
not, it's
room.
not to say the bids were not high. The actual construction contract was $611,000.
Yeah,
Okay?
but I think, do you
And
remember, it was about 2x.
How much
yeah.
was the Overlook Bridge alone was originally proposed to be 750,
Yeah,
and
that
then they
doesn't sound
reduced
right.
that a
Right.
lot.
So I believe my understanding,
I
I
thought that was
wasn't
like
here at the time
500
of the
by the time it
project, but some of the work was actually brought in-house. Quite a bit of the work was brought in-house to make the project happen. So maintenance crews, park planning crew were actually building decks and paths and trails and making that happen out there. So they really dialed back on the estimate. Anjali might have a little more history, do you?
Yeah, so due to the cost that came in for the boardwalk, it was taken off and was redesigned in-house and built by our maintenance crew.
What was the final cost? Because I thought it was originally like 750 and came down to like 500, which would then blow out the numbers that you've just given us.
The boardwalk cost by our crews to be built was just under 44,000.
But we don't know what the bid was. We don't have the bid history in front of us about what it was bid at.
So the boardwalk was 44 versus the price of a home of Sammamish?
Councilmember Warner, sorry, are you still have the floor?
I do,
Are
and the
you-
only thing I'm kind of wondering is if the motion gets amended so that we clarify that it's only the
Yeah, I think-
253.
yeah.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Why don't you
So thank you for the
Maybe withdraw
clarification.
and just-
Yeah,
maybe
what
that's probably the easier way to do it.
Councilmember Hornish, I appreciate that. That's clearly in favor of the whole thing. However, for tonight, I would like to withdraw my motion, and I'd like to resubmit a motion or a new motion to authorize you to move forward with planning, design, the $253,000 amount to do what you need to do to bring it back to us so that we can look at those other numbers.
I'll second that.
I second.
Been moved and seconded.
Hold on. Where do you get the 250?
Was there a question?
Yeah, where do you get the 253? I see 229.
It's in the
I see
packet.
229
Agenda
not to
bill,
exceed.
It's under the boardwalk.
It's under the budget line in the agenda bill. The cover of the agenda bill summarizes the project, and it has the budget amount of $253,000.
Right, because the payment on 3 on the contract says sum not to exceed 229,496.70. How's that relate to the 253?
So we've done some work already with studies. Yeah.
So the overall dollar amount that we have allocated includes a contingency if needed. So the contract that you're looking at is $230,000 from KPG with a remaining authorized amount of $23,000 to cover additional services if needed.
Contingencies.
Okay, thank you.
And, yeah, 10% contingency.
I'm good.
Okay, Councilmember Valderrama.
Yeah, a couple of comments. One of them that concerns me was actually what Mayor Malchow had talked about making that parking more flexible, because I remember in discussions with the group that lives out there, the neighbors, Jan Wilson, Deb Grasso, we specifically said that we were limiting that parking to reduce the impact on that neighborhood. So what I'm now hearing, though, is saying, oh yeah, we can be flexible and start pouring out into the meadow, and that's not what was presented to those citizens in a number of meetings that I was in. They fought tooth and nail to make sure we reduce the parking as minimal as possible. So I'd like some clarification as to which is it? Are they going to be impeding and allowed to expand and encourage people to start using the meadow, which is contrary to what was originally told, or are we going to adhere to what was told to them that we were going to try to limit the number of parking that took place there in usage? And likewise, if we start using the Southeast 16th, that again is bringing more numbers. So I'm trying to reconcile with what I've heard before in some meetings with those citizens before who were very concerned that this would become an active park. And at one time, there was a much larger parking place that had been presented to them, and there was much angst as we reduced it back down into that. So that's the first thing. So I'd like to have, when we come back, an answer to that, or to clarify between these two side statements that I'm hearing. So that's first. Second, I am getting more concerned about the security of this place, not just during the day and the cost of that security, but at night, what's going to start taking place at this facility, especially when you have teenagers. And I got to tell you, we got a lot of creeks and woods, but secluded tree houses, there aren't many here in the city. So that presents a different issue, and I don't know if that becomes a public safety issue that we have to look at, as well as head count, as we talked about for programming. So I'd like to get a real understanding of what's associated with that. As one time Curly had said about the Lake Sammamish Park, we got to be careful we don't create a crocodile petting zoo with the cost starting to eat us alive on this. Third, as we look at this contract and coming back to us, in the last discussion, you had walked us through some options of a minimal opening with the trails being done, utilities coming in, none of the parking, none of the roads. And so I would assume that as we're going through this master plan, that will be an option to look at a much reduced focus as well as a phased focus that the council could then bite off. And I say that biting my tongue because at the last time this came up, Council Member Nancy Whitten said despite being promised that each time, she's never seen a master plan that doesn't go full gun. So hopefully when we're looking at this, you'll be able to give us phases. And I'm going to recall and bring Nancy in here if we need to be able to look at it so that we can look at phases or parcels at that moment in time, because it sounds like we don't have to really dig into that at this point in time, but can at that moment once we have it come back to us.
Right.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Sorry, I had to take it off mute. Lots of applause. So I just would like to request that as council that we kind of continue to fly at the right altitude here, that the Parks Department is asking us to approve a contract to do a design for a plan for a project that was already approved by the council in the pro plan. And so while we may not have sat down and done the prioritization ourselves, we went through the pro plan with a fine-tooth comb and we approved the pro plan. We just approved the Parks Department's budget. And so we have done our duty. We have provided the policy and the guidance and the budget, and now the staff is just requesting that they be allowed to take the next step and execute a contract to get a design. We'll have another chance to spend plenty of time teasing apart all of those plans should we choose to, although my recommendation would be that, again, we fly at the appropriate altitude and say we've given you policy, we've given you direction, we've approved a budget, and as long as you stay within those guidelines, that this is the right thing to do. So I suggest we move to a vote and go ahead and wrap this agenda item up.
Deputy Mayor Moran.
Call for the vote.
Got one more light on. Councilmember Hornish.
I want to follow up, and Pam, I agree with you. Does this contract, if we approve it as is, include phasing? Will it give us options, to Councilmember Valderrama's point?
Right. When we move forward, we'll have alternates as part of the bidding process. So, for example, we mentioned tonight, like the ADA ramp for the treehouse could be an alternate bid. I think we had something else in there. The bridge on the trail system can be an alternate bid. So, hearing from Councilmember Romero, Valderrama, and yourself, we are going to bring some of those options, right? That we know
As
they're
part
going
of
to
the
be
contract.
right moving forward. That we know there's going to be pieces that are probably non-essential, but they're nice to have, and we'll bring them for direction from you.
Okay, very good. I have no more lights on. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Okay, by a vote of 7-0, it passes. Do we want to take
Good night.
a break, or do we want to move on? Keep going? Okay, recess? Short. Okay, 5 minutes, and then we will... Romero, Chris, Karen. All right, I'm going to start without him. Okay, we're going to pick back up where we left off. If you have additional conversations, feel free to move out into the hallway to have those. Our next item is a public hearing. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 13.15 of the City of Sammamish Municipal Code, authorizing the collection of surface water system development charges. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, I'm going to call on Mr. Lenishevsky to talk with you about this item. You can't sign up to speak. You just got to come up here.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, citizens. Steve Lenishevsky, Public Works Director. The Storm Development Charge Ordinance is here for public hearing. This is actually closing the books on work we finished at the end of last year for our storm comprehensive system planning in whole. With that said, it updates the fee for our development charge, and it's as exciting as that.
That's it, huh? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
You have a public hearing.
Oh, this is true. Yes, so can we pull, is there public hearing? There is no one. Okay, well, that makes it easier. All right, I'm going to open up the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to address the council on the stormwater rate study? Nope. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Open it up to council. Councilmember Hornish.
Move to adopt the ordinance as drafted in our packet.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Councilmember Hornish, your light's still on? No?
Getting there.
Okay. Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor say...
Wait. Is there going to be a presentation from?
No, I don't think so.
Staff on this?
No.
Now, what about the rates? I got to quit.
Okay. Councilmember Valderrama.
By adopting this motion, what are we adopting as far as, I thought there was some references made in this packet as to percentages that the city could consider in the stormwater, or is that on a different item that I'm looking at? Or the regional stormwater? Or is this strictly just the rates that we were looking at here?
I'm not sure what you are looking at, but this is just this system development charge for storm drain.
Okay, hold on one second here.
In the packet, you have the full report from last year's financial work for all
that's
rates.
The page 8 from last year's, from April, well, actually it's April 2018 from this year. Page 8. On page 8, you say, during the discussion process, we were given direct feedback from City Council that the city would not want to pay more than 25% of project costs. Developers pay a minimum of 75%, given these limitations. And then you have the chart that's out there, scenario 1, 2, 3, 4 on here. And so I'm trying to figure out how is that incorporated into what we're doing right now of the rates, or is that a later discussion? And furthermore, I'd like to know which city council gave you that direct feedback. This page
So
8.
it's actually page 14.
Oh, the packet, hold on. 14 of 50-some, page 8 of the report.
It's page 8 of the stormwater rate study. Page 8 is listed on the document itself, not in the packet.
This version isn't paginated at all, so I have to.
It's under the town center heading,
Yeah.
Steve. That helps. 3.f.
Yeah, it's a Sammamish rate study, page 8, and as Christy said, page, on our machine, page 14 overall of 53.
$3F?
Yes.
Yes.
So I do fear that given the entire packet has confused it. The entire report is relative to the entire storm drain comprehensive system planning we did last year.
Yeah.
That set fees for the monthly rates, which were increased by 19%. I don't know if you recall the conversation where council were trying to add projects to the list that weren't even being considered. So those rates are set separately as far as our monthly operational resources. This rate is specific to development. It is not particularly doing anything relative to the town center.
Okay,
The chapter that if you were,
this discussion will come later on?
when we talk about town center and regionalization, yes, but we
Okay, so
are
this
in
then-
further chapters in the report.
All right, so that's, I just want to make sure that this in no way is involved in what we're doing tonight.
No, you're setting the system development charge for new development activity in the city of Sammamish.
Okay, all right, I just
it's
want to make
updating it.
sure, because that tripped me when I saw that.
Yeah, I'm sorry the entire report was given as background, and
thank you.
It's been probably too long for us to go that far.
All those in favor?
Hey, hold on a second. I'm going to go back. I thought there was another one.
We're going to start calling you Columbo.
Yeah. I thought there was another rate that had a significant jump. I'm trying to find it right now for the stormwater, because I was expecting the presentation to be given. So hold on, let me go back up to the top onto some of the rates.
The only rates this is setting are stormwater development charge rates from $1,491 to $2,085.
They're in the agenda bill. Yep, that right there.
The agenda bill, those are the only rates you are setting with the establishment of this
Okay,
ordinance.
those three rates are three boxes on there. All right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, third time's the charm. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 6-0, it passes. Okay. We have another public hearing. This is authorizing the use of condemnation pursuant to Chapter 8.12 RCW as required for the Lower Commons to Big Rock Park Trail. Authorizing payment, therefore, from the city's Parks Capital Improvement Fund and providing for severability. Mr. City Manager.
I'm going to turn this to Ms. Fesser.
All right.
Hi, it's me again. Again, Angie Fesser, Parks and Recreation Director. Tonight we have before you a request for consideration and condemnation of a trail easement of 20 feet wide through the Balmoral open space area. We have had a trail identified through that area since 2004 in the Bikes, Trails and Pathways Plan. And we have acquired the 20-foot easement on the south side of this through the Lancaster HOA, and that's been approved and completed and done. We have been contacting members of the Balmoral development individually because it's not an HOA, and as a decision as an HOA, we've had to deal with 9 individual homeowners that each have an equal interest in the open space. So we have off and on been working on this for a handful of years, contacting them. We provided an offer based on an appraisal of $6,666 each for their 1/9 interest in the easement value. But without all 9 of them saying yes to that, we have to move into a condemnation process. So, kind of where we are.
Done? Or,
Yes,
sorry.
sorry.
Okay. Is there a sheet back there for the public hearing?
Yes, Madam Mayor, also too, We did receive an email from a Cara Hobbs that requested to postpone this. She wanted to testify but couldn't be here. I don't know if... And anyhow, since it was posted, you need to go ahead and have the public hearing, but if you decide to continue it to a date certain, you could do that as well. So.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. First, we have Kara Hobbs.
Kara Hobbs, sorry.
That's okay.
And I live at 640 222nd Place Southeast, Sammamish, Washington. I am one of the members of the Balmoral community. I'm going to be representing many of the residents there that are being directly affected. And obviously, these are the individuals who do not want to have a path of 20 feet wide running alongside their property of a very private residence. Those individuals include James and Kim Jordan, Sandeep, Ajitha Mirza, Todd and Deborah Steinhardt, and Cindy Craner and Sue Harrison, and of course myself, Kara Hobbs. Yes, we have requested, James Jordan had sent an email to City Council requesting a postponement, and it was denied. I also had sent one, and it was denied as well. That being said, it's 2 days before Thanksgiving. We have a lot of members on our neighborhood and residents that are not here. As it was stated earlier, the Balmoral community, in order to acquire this property, it has to be unanimous. And obviously, there's substantial residents that do not want a 20-foot pathway in their private residence going through. That being said, in order for condemnation to take place, as I'm sure most of you already know, legally, you have to have necessity. And here, necessity is not a mere convenience from one park to another. It is a necessity, meaning that there's not a viable option for another path to go through. As of right now, James Jordan had reached out to the city planner many times and had wanted to discuss various different plans and different proposals, but was not met with at all. In addition to that, I'd like to add that there is a viable option, at least that I know of straight away, and that's on 4th Avenue, or Southeast 4th. So Southeast 4th, the city, is, as you know, has put millions and millions of dollars into revamping the street. And by revamping the street, it's going to have a beautiful sidewalk, it's going to have beautiful roundabouts, and it's also going to have a bike path. This bike path can easily go, wrap around, and go down to the Big Rock Park. And I live on 222nd. I walk my dog every day, and I walk down to that park. And it takes me literally 10 minutes from my house. And if you have the park connected to the other park, it would still take you 5 minutes. So in essence, you're saving 5 minutes by breaking through the property of at least 8 homes that are multi-dollar estates that really wanted their property to be very private. That being said, on 222nd, we also have issues with the town, with the town city, or the lower park with the traffic. And now, not only do we have 222nd with the traffic, but we're going to have issues on our back as well.
I just need you to conclude real quick if you can.
Okay. In conclusion, there are many issues that are still outstanding. We have safety issues with the teenagers walking back and forth at night that the police can't control. You have the National Wildlife Federation certified wildlife habitat that this is wetlands that are protected wetlands that they're going to be building through. So it's not only personal property, these are wetlands that the state and the National
Ms. Hobbs, I'm sorry, I do need you to wrap up.
Okay. So with that being said, I really hope and I would assume that you would see that necessity has not been met and that we should not approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Jan Bird, followed by Richard Johnson.
if I can, to staff. I assume that you've looked at this option that they had proposed as one of the options earlier on?
Right, early on in the project, we did look at 5 viable options, and this was the one that worked best, actually, after that. So yeah, staff had researched it. I have a memo in regards to that, dated April of 2013.
Okay, thank you.
It's on the record. Yeah.
I also had another question.
Go ahead, Jen. You can come up while she's asking.
How many, you've got 6 people that you listed in that letter that were against this project. How many are in that neighborhood?
9 total.
So 6 out of 9 are against it?
Actually, some of those names are 2 people in one household. So
That's what I understood.
what we've been communicated, we actually show 4 supportive, 4 against, and 1 without a response at this time.
Oh, sounds like good counsel.
Against and 4. Oh, I understand. Okay.
So we have a conversation that's going on that's not being recorded because you have no microphone. So I'm going to let Jan go here.
Okay.
And we can sort out these details after the public hearing. I think we can ask some questions.
I'll try to talk to you later.
Okay, I'm Jan Bird. I live at 3310 221st Avenue Southeast, and I strongly urge council to adopt the ordinance related to condemnation of the open space in Balmoral as required for the lower commons to Big Rock Park easement. We're talking only about 0.14 mile of trail, but without this little piece of land, there isn't the connected system. What we're trying to do is to connect Town Center with the Lower Commons with the 3 parcels of Big Rock Park. And this is being done basically through a jointly owned green space. I think the city's going about this in the right way. They're trying to work with the homeowners, but if they refuse, that seems to be the next step. I know nobody's a real fan of eminent domain, but that may be all we've got here. And also a big shout out to the Lancaster HOA for looking at the greater good. Eventually, I think this will be like the East Lake Sammamish Trail. The real estate agents will use this as a selling point for those homes, and the owners will probably be the most regular users of the trail. It'll be a similar situation to have Windsor Green Homes next to Hazel Wolf Wetland, or Trosax next to Soaring Eagle, or the homes next to Beaver Lake Preserve. So I hope you'll adopt this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Richard Johnson, followed by Karen Lee, and then Cheryl Wagner.
Richard Johnson, 20035 Southeast 27th Place. I'm making a comment in support of the ordinance that seems to be required to connect Lower Commons to Big Rock Park. I was on the Parks Commission in the late 90s and in the early 2000s. And I can tell you that trail connectivity among the parks was a priority from the beginning, going all the way back to the initial trails, bikeways, and paths document. Unfortunately, we haven't made as much progress as we had hoped at that time, but I will hope you will seize this opportunity to make that progress. In particular, this corridor from Lower Commons to Ebright, which were the 2 parks that the city had at that time, was a priority corridor. Now with the addition of Big Rock Park, Beaton Hill coming soon, and the town center, I think this corridor is even more compelling as an asset to the city. So I urge you to not allow this special opportunity to get away and be blocked by a gap of, as I understand it, less than 1,000 feet through what is already designated open space. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Hornish, did you have a question?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay. Karen Lee? Okay, not here. Cheryl Wagner?
My name's Cheryl Wagner. I live at 20035 Southeast 27th Place. I am a park commissioner, but I am speaking as a private individual in this manner. The reason I'm speaking about this is because trail connectivity is so important, because that's the best way to get from Lower Commons down into Big Rock Park and our new park to be. And we search for connectivity in this land of cars and the ability to walk and to get exercise and not have to use a car. And I'd encourage you to support this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council on this? Okay, seeing none, I will, Councilmember Ritchie, did you have a question? Well, first I want to ask if the council wants to close the public hearing, because I need to either do that or I need to extend the public hearing.
Can I?
Yes, please, Councilmember
So
Ritchie.
my comment is that I think I'm definitely supportive of continuous trails or trail connectivity. I also take condemnation of private property very, very seriously. And I think that given the proximity to Thanksgiving, and given that there are other voices that should be heard in a public hearing, I think we should extend the hearing until
I think we have a very, I think we have a December 4th meeting. So I think that should be a date certain.
December 4th, in the hopes that at least Mr. Jordan and frankly the other members, I would just like to hear what they have to say in an open public hearing. I mean, I know that that's a lot to ask, but I would hope that, I'm not making a motion yet, but I just,
Yeah, I can just simply extend it.
I would just hope, I mean, I take it you're one of the representatives or maybe the only one here for the okay. I wish, that'd be cool. So I would hope that maybe we can get them here on the 4th. That'd be great. I just think it's important that we hear. I mean, I have an opinion about it, but I think when you start taking private lands and you start talking about condemnation for the public good, that's something we should be very careful and make sure people's voices are heard. And there's been an email that I read today from Mr. Jordan and his spouse, I believe, and I heard you today. I take it seriously. I take the trail connectivity equally seriously. If there's any other options, I know Angie's gone out of her way to explain this in the past that the other options have been pursued. Let's take a breath. There's no reason not to extend it at this point and look at things next week. So thank you.
So Mike, we don't need a motion in order to do that. I can just simply extend the public hearing. So we'll just extend the public hearing to a date certain of December 4th. So we will not be taking action on this tonight, if that's all right with everyone.
So I have a question, which is the staff, just to make sure that there is no implication to work plans or that by extending the public hearing. From your nodding, I assume not.
Oh.
Okay.
No,
Thank you.
no, there's no implication. I do want to add one note. It's a 20-foot wide easement. The path itself is only 5 feet wide. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay. Our next order of business is amending Resolution R 2018-798, the city's master fee schedule. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, this is a resolution that amends your master fee schedule for 2019. These fees are what your budget is based upon, and each year we do this to reflect the actual cost of what it costs to provide those services. If you look at your agenda bill, you have 10 pages of fees there, so I won't go through and indicate each one of those, but you'll see which ones have increased, and you can see by how much. And we have our finance staff here, and we're ready to answer any questions you may have on this fee schedule.
So just a little bit more information on that. So this is our annual process that we go through in looking at the fee schedule, and so we're updating for inflationary factors primarily on those things, but the other adjustments are noted. So that's why the full fee schedule is becoming before you, and also that it's a resolution we're redeclaring that this is the fees that would be in place. All of those would be included in the revenue projections that were part of the adopted budget already.
Councilmember Hornish.
Just to clarify, we're now adopting the stormwater in this master schedule, whereas before it used to be in the code, correct?
You actually adopted it in the code also. We just reference it in the fee schedule.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but it's being increased. This is the first time we're increasing it in the schedule, or did we do that last year?
No, we did not do that last year.
No, this is the first year. Okay, I just wanted to clarify in my mind. Thank you. Okay.
Deputy Mayor Moran.
Motion to adopt the master fee schedule.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay,
taking one quick glance again.
Better push your button.
Just to say hold? All right, I'll say hold. Can you let me know if there was any that was, I thought there might be one that jumped up a multiple here, and I was trying to find that. Or was I mistaken on that? Trying to see if I can hold that out. I don't see it here, so I'm going through these pages quickly.
Yeah, those stormwater fees and
The stormwater fees, so maybe you can provide a little bit more explanation on that. So there's an operating fee, so Steve mentioned that previously, it's the per parcel fee, and then there's the stormwater development charge, that's the capital piece. And so that was what the public hearing was related to, was the capital piece previously. And so that's also logistically why we're asking for the fee schedule to come after we've had the public hearing on the capital fee, so that we have that action prior to taking final action on the fee resolution itself. So the fee resolution has the operating rate in there as well, and so that's, both of those pieces are there.
I saw the one that jumped out at me was under Public Works. If you look under Public Works, and it's a catch-all that you have there for all others that goes from 1,297, and actually, and the town center projects, both of those go from in multiples that basically we're looking at. So sorry, under Public Works, and that's on page, let me see if I can hit this, 14 of 15.
So Councilmember Valderrama, Steve Laniszewski, Public Works.
Yeah.
Those are the fees that are necessary now to operate the concurrency program that has been adopted.
Those are the fees necessary for?
To manage the concurrency program you have recently adopted.
Okay.
And it's been broken up in a little bit different orientation between, strike and delete is always hard to read. So we had to change a little bit of the methodology on how we charge certain size of plats. That's why some of the proportionate jumps are large. When you see a short plat up to, there's a line through a 4, now 9 lots, it's $5,064, as it used to be $256 per. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Thank you. When I was going through this earlier, more just kind of a question. House moving, is this kind of like picking up the reared freed and moving it across town, or are you all actually going after moving trucks as they're coming into town and chase them down for $100?
The first one,
Thank you.
actually moving the house.
I kind of figured. Yeah. It's kind of funny, you know, like relocation of a structure versus, hey, you coming in? Or, yeah. Right.
You missed that in the budget, Jason, that
Yeah.
staffing need?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's moving permit. I'm like, are you really? So that's funny. Thank you. Yeah.
I have a question to the question.
Okay, I don't have any more lights on, so you good, Councilmember Valderrama? Still scrolling? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 6-0, the master fee schedule has passed. Okay.
Got to keep a sense of humor.
Next, we have a resolution establishing medical insurance premium contribution rates. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, the question before you this evening is, shall the city continue to share with its employees the 2% medical premium discount that it receives from the employee wellness activities using the same method that's been in place since 2012? As you know, historically, the city pays medical premium for its employees, and the employees have contributed towards the premium for their dependent coverage. Beginning in 2012, the city reduced the 10% employee contribution to the medical insurance premium for their dependents to 8% based on that employees' successful participation in the AWC Well City program. That participation in this program results in a 2% reduction in the city's total AWC medical premiums for the following year, and this resolution would eliminate the need to annually set this employee contribution percentage each year, because the resolution sets the program in place and establishes the employee's contribution at 8% based on this participation. Should they fail to successfully complete the program, then their share would be 10%. So that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish this evening.
Councilmember Ritchie.
I support the motion. I support the action. Every company I've ever consulted with uses Red Brick or some sort of wellness program to incentivize wellness amongst their employees. And I think this is completely appropriate to do and to formalize it. And I move to vote.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 7-0, the medical premiums are adopted. Okay, we're moving right along here. There is one item that I need council's assistance on in my council report, which is we need to decide who our voting member for the SCA annual meeting is. I'm not sure who here is planning to attend. I know I am planning to attend. Is anyone else?
To attend the what?
The SCA annual meeting. They'll pass the budget for Sound Cities Association and the member assessment fees, the fee the city will pay to be an SCA member at that meeting.
You say you're going to be there?
I will be there, yes.
I nominate you to be the voting member.
All right. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 6-0, I will be our voting member at the SCA. I think Councilmember Stewart's report is there, but it didn't look like there was anything that was action-oriented there. Mr. City Manager, you kind of gave your report already, so we're done there. No need for an executive session, I assume. Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 6-0, we are adjourned.
Wow.